Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the fanfiction guy, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Let's begin. It was a bright, sunny day. The trees swayed in the breeze, children played outside, and birds chirped. It was a good day for the Yagi family, who were new to the neighborhood and had been warmly welcomed by many. Toshinori Yagi and Inko Yagi had two appealing children, Izumi and Izuku. Izuku was the playful one, always joking and pulling pranks, while Izumi was more serious, focused on her studies and rarely joking. Despite their differences, Izuku loved his sister dearly and never felt the need to compete with her. Their best friends, the Bakugo twins, Katsuki and Katsumi, were quite the opposite. They argued and competed about everything, from who could finish their food first to who was the fastest at tag. Their fiery tempers often led to quick disputes, much to the annoyance of their parents, but it was a source of amusement for the Yagi twins. Every day after daycare, the four friends would play together, and one day, Izuku introduced a new game, Heroes vs. Villains. All of them wanted to be heroes, but none wanted to take on the role of a villain. Izuku suggested, "I think it would be beneficial for us to take turns being the villain." Beneficial? Villains are bad people, Izumi replied, skeptical. If we want to become the best pro-heroes, we need to understand how villains think. Pretending to be villains will help us gain insight into their strategies, Izuku explained. Izumi considered this. That will help us a lot. Are you on board? He asked. Sure. Let's tell the others, she said, walking toward the monkey bars where the twins were playing. Katsuki, perched atop the monkey bars, noticed them approaching. Hey guys! What were you talking about? Katsumi flipped around to see the two green-haired kids. I think it would be a good idea to play the game Izuku came up with, Izumi replied. Why? Katsumi asked. It'll help us in the future when we become pro-heroes. We'll understand how villains operate and be able to defeat them, Izuku explained. That would help us, Katsuki agreed. And it's a great idea. Katsumi exclaimed. I'll play, Katsuki said. Who's going to be the villain? Izumi asked. Me. Katsumi shouted. No. Me. Katsuki countered. Their playful back and forth made Izumi and Izuku laugh. They cherished their mixed friend group, enjoying the fun moments together. But as they all knew, good times could turn challenging. The following month marked an important day, the day all four of them would visit the quirk doctor. They had anticipated this moment for as long as they could remember. Izuku and Izumi were scheduled for the morning, while Katsuki and Katsumi would go in the evening. Though they wanted to go together, their parents had decided otherwise. At the doctor's office, the Yagi family waited in the lobby. Izuku was excited to discover his quirk, while Izumi felt nervous. Noticing her anxiety, Izuku reached for her hand. She looked up to see her brother smiling brightly. Don't worry, Izumi. You'll have the best quirk, he reassured her. That's not what I'm worried about, she replied. Then what are you worried about? He asked. After a moment of silence, Izumi confessed, I don't like needles. Izuku smiled warmly at her. Just then, someone called out, Izuku and Izumi Yagi. They stood up and followed the nurse down the hallway. As they walked, Izuku tapped Izumi's shoulder. I'll be right here if you need me, he said. Izumi smiled back and mouthed, thank you. They reached the examination room, and the quirk doctor entered. He asked Izuku and Izumi to a separate room to draw some blood and take an X-ray. After what felt like forever, Izuku and Izumi returned while holding hands. Their parents smiled warmly at the sight. I told you I got you, Izuku said with a big smile. Izumi looked away shyly and whispered, thank you. After a while, the quirk doctor came back into the room with two folders in his hand. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Yagi. Sorry for the wait. It took longer than usual. It's okay. We're willing to wait if we need to, Toshinori said. It is worth the wait indeed. I haven't looked at the results, so we will all find out what quirks your children have together, the quirk doctor said as he sat down. Are you guys ready to know what your quirks are? Izuku and Izumi yelled, yes, in unison. Alright, I will show you the X-ray of both of your ankles and read off the blood test. The quirk doctor typed on the computer and turned the screen towards the Yagis. On the left side of the screen is Izumi's. As you can see here, the doctor pointed at the screen, she doesn't have a gap in this area, which is a good sign. As for Izuku, he pointed to the right side of the screen, he does have a gap. Izuku started to worry a bit, and both of their parents grew anxious. What does that mean? Izuku asked. It means that there is a slight chance of you having a quirk, but don't worry. This folder I am holding contains your blood test results. This will officially determine whether you have a quirk. The quirk doctor looked at both Inko and Toshinori and smiled reassuringly. Just because there is no gap in Izuku's ankle doesn't mean he is quirkless. The quirk doctor opened Izumi's folder. Congratulations, you have a quirk. It looks like you have an upgraded version of your mother's. You have telekinesis, but with a twist. You can levitate things through contact or with your mind, carry more than one object, and even carry yourself. Izumi was practically jumping out of her seat, thrilled to have a quirk based on her mother, her role model. Izuku could see how happy she was, and he felt happy for her too. Did you hear that, Izumi? You have a way stronger quirk than Mom. I still can't believe it. Izumi replied. Toshinori placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder. Well, believe it, sweetie. Izumi looked back at her mother, who was smiling just as much, but Izumi noticed her tension. Izuku caught the same tension in his father. They must be as nervous as I am. The quirk doctor pulled out Izuku's folder and opened it. A long silence followed before he finally said, I'm sorry, son. It looks like you do not have a quirk. Izuku's heart sank. He couldn't believe he didn't have a quirk. I can't be a hero. He looked back at his parents, who shared his sadness. Usually, when parents find out something that might hurt their child, they would look away. Why aren't they looking at me? The quirk doctor sensed the change in atmosphere and Izuku's heartbreak. Before he could speak, Izumi chimed in, Hey, it's okay. Just because you don't have a quirk doesn't mean you can't be one. You could even be the very first quirkless hero in the world. Izuku smiled at Izumi and relaxed a bit. Yeah, maybe I can be. Izumi placed her hand on her brother's shoulder. I know you can be. The quirk doctor smiled and stood up. When you guys are ready, you may leave and check out. Thank you for coming in today. After a few minutes, they all left the hospital and were now sitting in the car. Toshinori looked forward, Inko was on her phone, Izuku gazed out the window, and Izumi observed everyone. Izuku's heart felt heavy, and Izumi could tell. He wasn't as lively as usual. Are you okay, Izuku? Izumi asked. Izuku looked away from the window. I'm okay. What about you? Are you excited that you have a better quirk than Mom? I am. I can't believe I have a stronger quirk than Mom. Watch out, Mom. Izumi is coming for you. The twins laughed at Izuku's joke, but their father remained quiet, which was unusual. The laughter faded. As Toshinori started the car. Toshinori, I found a restaurant where they cook in front of you, Inko said. Perfect. Guys, we're going to celebrate after we stop by the house. The twins cheered happily. Once they arrived home, all four of them went inside. Izuku was about to head to his room when his parents called him back. Izuku, can you go to your room, please? We want to have a private conversation with you, Inko asked. Izumi didn't question further and went to her room. Inko and Toshinori waited for Izumi to leave before Toshinori said, You're staying home while we go out. Izuku was taken aback. Why? Because we said so. And you don't have a quirk, so there isn't a reason for you to go, Inko replied. But celebrating a family thing. Exactly, it is a family thing, Toshinori said. There was a short pause from Izuku. His eyes widened, mouth open, and body stiff. Are you saying that I'm not family? That's exactly what we're saying, Toshinori replied. Izuku remained quiet and looked at the floor. Tears began to well up in his eyes, and his knuckles turned white. Izumi! It's time to go! Izumi ran out of her room with a big smile on her face. Are you ready to celebrate? Toshinori asked. Are you ready, Izuku? Izumi asked. Izuku looked at his parents, who were giving him a glare. A shiver ran down his spine as he looked at Izumi. I don't feel well, so I'm going to stay home. You don't feel well? You were fine before, Izumi said. He started to feel nauseous while we were driving home. We pulled over to ask him if he was okay, Inko replied. Izumi looked at Izuku with concern. Maybe we should stay home. No, you can go. Don't worry about me. I will be fine, Izuku said hurriedly. Izumi looked at him one more time before he gave her a warm smile. I promise. Go and have fun. Izumi returned the smile and headed towards the door. Inko and Toshinori walked past Izuku without a glance and left the house. It had been 10 years since the first signs of Izuku being neglected. At first, it was strange and sad, but now it was the new norm for him. Every day, his parents made him clean the house, prepare breakfast, and rarely let him eat or participate in family activities. Izuku spent most of his days in his room, reading a book and staring at the ceiling, pondering life. What is life? Izuku wanted to find the answer, but he didn't know how to obtain it. No matter what he did, he never got closer to the answer. Should I give up? One thing Izuku learned when he was younger was that there was no point in trying to change something if there was no reaction. Every situation he encountered always led to that conclusion. He wanted help from anyone, but everyone had turned their back on him. Inko and Toshinori when he was 5, Katsuki and Katsumi when they started kindergarten, and now Izumi in middle school. It was their last year of middle school. Everyone entered the classroom with their friends, except Izuku. He walked in with his head down and was hit by a few paper balls. Ignoring the insults, he continued walking until he was tripped by none other than Katsuki Bakugo. Nerd, watch where you're going. His insult was followed by chuckles from the others. Learn how to walk properly, Deku. Katsumi yelled. They had been calling him that ever since they turned on him. He would never forget the day they pushed him into a puddle and called him Deku. Every time he heard the word, it took him back to that moment. Izuku got up from the ground and sat at his desk, laying his head down. He sighed and turned towards Izumi, who was chatting with Katsuki, Katsumi, and a few other classmates. He began to smile. Izuku couldn't find it in his heart to hate Izumi because she was his #1 fan, even if she remained silent. He wanted to shake off the feeling but didn't have the strength to do it. As he looked at Izumi, he was pushed out of his seat. He looked up to see 2 classmates grinning. Who are you smiling at? One classmate said. Nothing. Izuku replied. Obviously something, the classmate insisted. Bro. He's a weirdo, remember? There's no point in asking him, the other chimed in. You're right, the first classmate replied. He stepped over Izuku's chair and pulled him up by his collar. You should be smiling, especially when your life is as sad as it gets. Remember that. He threw Izuku back onto the ground. As Izuku lay there, he could hear laughter in the background. Some were laughing at him, while others were minding their own business. He looked to his right to see Izumi, who instantly looked away. Why do you look so disgusted? The bell rang, and the teacher entered the room. Settle down, everyone. Pull out your textbooks. Go to page 344 and read silently. Most of the students groaned but complied. In the midst of the silence, Izuku was lost in his thoughts. As much as he wanted to pay attention, he just didn't have the drive anymore. He looked outside the window and heard someone call his name. Yes. Answer the question, the teacher replied. Izuku remained silent, hearing chuckling from beside him. Not surprised that Deku doesn't know. His head is as hollow as a plastic ball. The students began to laugh at Izuku, causing him to look down into his lap. Everyone be quiet, the teacher yelled. The room fell silent, and Izuku looked at the teacher. If you can answer this question, you won't have detention. Teach, that's not fair. Katsumi protested. How's that not fair? You're giving him a chance to answer the question when he clearly wasn't paying attention, Katsumi replied. Unlike you, he actually pays attention in class, while you guys are making paper ball and throwing them at him. It's still I'm the teacher. You're the student. My classroom, my rules, so be quiet. Katsumi was going to argue back, but she fell silent. Izuku, true or false? Everyone with similar quirks has the same drawbacks. That's not fair. That is the easiest question. Katsumi yelled. Just because it's an easy question doesn't mean it's easy for Deku, Katsuki replied. Laughter erupted in the classroom, causing Izuku to slouch in his chair. Shut up, Katsumi, go stand outside the room. Katsuki, you have one more chance to disrupt my class. Why do I have to leave? Katsumi protested. Because you are being disruptive, and I just told you to be quiet. I've had enough of your backtalk. Katsumi let out a loud sigh and marched out of the classroom, slamming the door behind her. The teacher turned back to Izuku and repeated the question. What's the answer? False. Why? Because the genetics between people are different, so it's only natural that everyone has different drawbacks. That is correct. Izuku felt a lift in his stomach, a sense of pride for getting it right. He glanced at Izumi, who was reading her book behind her textbook. Rookie's move. He sighed quietly and returned his gaze to the window. After what felt like forever, school was finally over. Kids walked with their friends, chatting and joking around. I wish I had that. Izuku continued toward the gate, feeling many eyes on him. He squeezed his backpack tighter and walked on. As he passed by, he heard whispers among the students. He understood some of it, enough to feel down. He kept his gaze on the ground and quickened his pace. He finally reached the gate and turned the corner, only to be pushed against the wall. He slowly lifted himself up, but then felt a kick to his back. He couldn't see who it was, but he recognized the voice. Why now? Kaken? Izuku struggled to get up, but every time he got close, he was pushed or kicked down again. A headache throbbed from the repeated impacts. He tried to open his eyes but found it difficult. He reached for his eye and felt a painful swelling. Rolling onto his stomach, he attempted to rise again, but was kicked back down. Can't. His arms were too sore to lift. He managed to lift his head but regretted it when someone grabbed a chunk of his hair, forcing him to arch his back. He was barely on his knees, his hands not touching the ground. His back and eyes hurt, but nothing stung more than seeing most of the school recording and laughing. He fought back tears, lifting his arms slowly to grab whoever had a hold of his hair. Let go. I don't want to, Katsuki replied, pulling harder. Izuku grunted and grasped Katsuki's wrist. Before he could react further, he heard a sharp sound and felt a jolt of pain as his wrist bent awkwardly. The laughter around him faded as Katsuki and his friends continued to mock him. Katsuki threw him to the ground and placed his foot on Izuku's head. How are you feeling? Ho! Bakugo kicked Izuku's side with the same foot and pressed it back down. I asked you a question. Horrible. Izuku whispered. Good. That's what you're supposed to feel. You don't deserve happiness. You don't deserve a chance. You don't deserve to exist. All you are is a waste of space in my life. Izuku let out a hissing sound as Bakugo pressed harder on his head. What can a quirkless weirdo do that will benefit all of us other than being a punching bag? Izuku didn't respond, prompting another painful tug on his hair. His head was lifted, and his legs struggled to support him. Exactly, there is nothing else for someone who is quirkless to do in life, other than being used as a punching bag. He threw Izuku to the ground. Izuku felt consciousness slipping away, his breathing slowing. His eyelids grew heavy, and he fought to keep them open, but he lost the battle and passed out. About 2 hours later, Izuku woke up in an unfamiliar room. His eyes adjusted slowly as he blinked rapidly. He tried to lift his finger and felt something solid on his wrist. Looking down, he saw a cast. Izuku attempted to rise from the bed but lacked the strength. Great. Not only did I get beaten again, but I'm late to get home and in a cast. Can this day get any worse? Possibly, but not guaranteed. Izuku looked around the room for the source of the thought but found no one in sight. Izuku looked around the room again and saw no one. This is weird. Suddenly, he felt a strange sensation, as if someone was speaking to him. Relax, dude. I was joking. Who are you? Where are you? What happened to me? Well, for starters, you were knocked out cold. You are in the nurse's office and we are here now. Izuku tried to grasp what was happening. You didn't answer my question. Who are you? I'm not telling you who I am. Then how do you expect me to believe you? Look around you. Hesitantly, Izuku glanced around the room and realized he was indeed in his school's nursing office. He felt a bandage wrapped around his head. Your injuries are really bad, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to help you. It's okay, but thanks for trying. Wait, what? That was not me talking. Izuku turned to see his teacher, Mr. Aoi, standing at the door. Mr. Aoi. He attempted to sit up but let out an agonizing grunt. Don't try to get up. You need rest. Mr. Aoi walked over and gently pushed him back down. But I'm okay, Mr. Aoi. No, you're not. You just got hurt and were knocked out cold. Good thing I left earlier than usual, otherwise, you would have had worse injuries. Izuku placed his hand on Mr. Aoi's arm and tried to push him away. I'm okay, I promise. Mr. Aoi looked at him suspiciously before backing away. I contacted your parents, and they won't be here for another hour. Until then, stay here and rest. But Mr. Aoi left the room, closing the door behind him. You and I both know you're not fine, especially with the little sleep you get and after what just happened. But I'm fine. Sure, let's go with that. Before Izuku could respond, the door opened again. He looked to his left and saw Izumi with their book bags on her back. His mouth curved into a smile. Hey Izumi. How are you? She did not reply. I didn't expect you to still be here. Knowing you, you would have been gone ages ago. Izumi remained silent, making Izuku uncomfortable. Mr. Aoi said that Mom and D. Shut up. Izuku stopped talking, confused. Why did you? I said shut up. He was stunned. This was the first time he had ever heard Izumi yell at him. He wanted to ask if she was okay or what was wrong, but the atmosphere shifted, and he decided to stay silent. Izuku, I have something to tell you. Something I've been holding inside for years. I didn't want to tell you at first because I didn't want to break away, but today is the day. Izuku waited patiently while Izumi stared at the floor. She sighed before continuing. Ever since you were diagnosed as quirkless, I thought, I didn't expect this. I could see you were sad and Mom and Dad were sad too. I was sad because we won't be able to become the best pro-hero duo in the world. That dream went down the drain, and it was time for a new one, to protect my brother. Izuku smiled at her concern but didn't like the reason. Izumi, just because I'm quirkless doesn't mean I can't protect myself. I am capable. No, you're not. What do you mean no? Did you get a brain injury? You just got hurt, recorded, and made fun of in front of the whole school. You can't protect yourself, and I can't protect you for long. Izuku was taken aback. Izumi, if you're worried about me, don't be. I won't get hurt again. But how long are you going to keep saying that? You can't just keep saying that. It's the truth. No, it's not. You're just a quirkless nobody who can't protect himself. Izuku fell silent, his expression dropping. He didn't expect to hear those words from her, and it hurt. Quirkless people rely on those with quirks. You rely on me to protect you, but guess what? I can't. I have better things to do, like studying, hanging out with friends, and training to become a pro-hero. What are you trying to say? Izumi lifted her head, her face filled with anger. Stay away from me. All you are doing is bringing me down along with you. Oh, Izumi this, oh Izumi that, Izumi, 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 Izumi. I've had enough of you orbiting around me. Just because you don't have a quirk doesn't mean you have to make my life a living hell. Izuku couldn't believe his sister would say that to him. He never expected her to look so angry or to feel like she didn't want him anymore. Izumi threw Izuku's backpack on the ground and turned towards the door. No, 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 no. Izuku used all his strength to get out of bed. He tried to run towards Izumi but tripped instead. She looked back to see him on the floor, tears threatening to fall from his eyes. Please, Izumi. Don't leave me. You're the only person I have left. First, it was Mom and Dad, then Katsuki and Katsumi, and now everyone I've met. I don't want you to leave me. Izumi continued to look at him, who was now trying to crawl to her. She turned towards the door and opened it. Stop looking at me like that. You look desperate. I won't hurt you, but I will give you another warning. Stay away. As she stepped out of the room, Izuku grabbed her ankle, and she already knew who it was. She balled her hands into fists and used her telekinesis to lift him against the window. What part do you not understand? Stay away from me. Don't look at me. Don't think of me. And don't even think about talking to me, or I will do something worse than this. She released him from the window and left the room, leaving Izuku on the ground, crying into his hands. Izuku lay in the same spot where Izumi left him, feeling miserable, sad, and abandoned. Why does it have to be me? What have I done to deserve this? As the tears flowed faster, his sadness transformed into another emotion he thought he would never feel. Oh, what's this? You're angry. Shut up. You're just a voice in my head that only appears when I'm sad. Just leave. I don't feel like it. I'm not asking. And I am telling you. Just because you're angry doesn't mean you should hold it inside. Plus, this is the first time you felt angry, so I want to see what happens next. Izuku lifted his head from his knees and looked at the door Izumi had walked through, yet had not returned. How long have you been here? Since you were born. Why are you just now coming out? Let me guess. You're only here for your amusement. That's partially true, but not fully. I'm here because I believe it is time for me to appear. Why now, of all times? I don't know. Izuku remained quiet as he stared at the door, reflecting on everything that had transpired in the last 2 hours, getting knocked down, hearing a voice in his head, and being told by his sister that she wanted nothing to do with him. Maybe I should disappear. Where did that come from? I mean, no one wants me, so what's the point of staying here? True, but it would make sense to finish middle school before leaving. Why after graduating? I don't know. Can you just be quiet? You're a pain and not helping the situation. I can, but I don't want to. Hey, if I were you, I would get revenge. On whom? What do you mean who? On everyone who wronged you, especially Izumi, Katsuki, Katsumi, and your so-called parents. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Because it would only make me like them, evil, cruel, and mean. I want to be a hero, not a villain. Who said a villain can't be a hero? Everyone. So, you listen to what other people say? Izuku remained quiet, opening his mouth and closing it again. Did I guess? See, that's your problem. You let others dictate your judgment. In the end, you still have high hopes for those who won't change. In the background, a car honked. Izuku gripped the edge of the window and pulled himself up. He looked outside and saw his parents getting out of the car. Here's a free lesson. Stop letting people take over your life. If you want to eat, eat. If you want to talk back, talk back. If you want to fight back, fight. Stop letting others dictate what you can and can't do. And don't expect people to change because they won't. As Izuku listened to the voice, he watched his father give Izumi a big hug while their mother smiled. He felt himself sinking deeper into despair. Maybe he's right. No. Izuku turned around to see Mr. Aoi standing in the doorway. Your parents are here. He looked back at the window before slowly walking to the bed. Mr. Aoi noticed him struggling and walked over, swinging his arm around Izuku's shoulders, grabbing his bag, and leading him out the door. As they walked down the hallway, Izuku was lost in thought, something he could never stop doing, but not for his benefit. Mr. Aoi could tell he was preoccupied and wondered what it could be but didn't want to pry. How is your leg? It's okay, Izuku replied. How did you get by the window? Izuku opened his mouth and then shut it immediately. This was the first time he had stopped himself from protecting Izumi and realized how close he was to revealing the truth. Stop letting others tell you what you can and can't do, Izuku sighed to himself, reflecting on the voice in his head. Mr. Aoi noticed how quiet he was and reassured him, don't worry about it. They continued down the hallway when Izuku suddenly stopped. Mr. Aoi quickly halted to avoid making Izuku fall, looking at him with a confused expression. Is everything okay? Izuku remained silent. This was the first time Mr. Aoi had seen him so resistant. Usually outspoken, Izuku was now quiet. You don't have to tell me what's going on. Just remember, I'm here for whatever you're going through. The silence lingered until Izuku finally spoke. Izumi. She used her telekinesis on me. Pushed me against the wall. Mr. Aoi was taken aback, his expression turning sad, something Izuku hated. Just because I'm quirkless doesn't mean I need pity. Not even from you. So, fix your face and help me to the car. Mr. Aoi flinched at Izuku's raised voice, a rare occurrence. He didn't respond but respected Izuku's wishes and continued to the front door. Once they reached the front, they saw Inko, Toshinori, and Izumi by the car. Hello, Mr. Aoi said with a warm smile. Hello, Mr. Aoi, Inko replied, returning the smile. How are you? I am doing well. How about yourself? Same old, same old. Toshinori stepped forward, giving Mr. Aoi a stern look. May I ask what happened for him to get like this? Mr. Aoi sensed a shift in the atmosphere from friendly to authoritative. Izuku was attacked by a group of students at the front of the school. What did I tell you about getting into fights at school? Izuku stayed quiet, staring at the ground. Mr. Aoi spoke for him. He didn't start the fight. He was actually jumped. That's all you have to say? Mr. Aoi thought, feeling frustrated. Your son is hurt, and your reaction is just, "H'm." Taking a breath, Mr. Aoi continued, your daughter also used her quirk on Izuku while he was in the nursing office. Inko and Toshinori exchanged confused glances. What do you mean? Izumi? She is our star child. Toshinori approached Izumi, placing his hands on her shoulders. Why would she ever do that? I have to agree, Inko added. She would never hurt him. Believe it or not, it's the truth, Mr. Aoi insisted. Izumi wouldn't hurt a fly. There is footage of her using her quirk on Izuku, which violates school rules. The sudden outburst shocked everyone. Izuku looked up at his teacher. Mr. Aoi realized his tone and cleared his throat. If you would like proof, there's footage. Inko and Toshinori remained silent, their expressions stern. If there's footage, then there's no reason for us to look at it. I apologize for her behavior, Inko said. I would prefer for Izumi to apologize to Izuku herself, Mr. Aoi replied. After a long silence, Izumi looked at Izuku and said, I'm sorry for using my telekinesis on you. Izuku nodded, glancing at his parents' disappointed faces before looking down at the ground. Now that that's done, Izumi, you have detention for a week. But that's not fair. Izumi protested. She apologized to Izuku, so why should she be punished? Toshinori asked. Just because she apologized doesn't mean she's off the hook. She still broke a school rule, and as a consequence, she receives a week of detention. If you have an issue with that, take it up with the principal. The three fell silent, looking away. We understand, Inko said. Okay, well, I hope you drive safely back home, Mr. Aoi said. Inko shot him a sidelong glance as she walked to the car. Toshinori opened the door for Izuku while Mr. Aoi assisted him inside. Once he was settled, Mr. Aoi stepped away from the car as they drove off. Had been driving for 20 minutes in silence. Inko didn't ask Izumi what she wanted for dinner, and Toshinori didn't inquire about her day. Izuku felt anxious as the silence stretched on. He was used to the silent treatment, but not directed at Izumi. He glanced at her. She was staring straight ahead, lost in thought. Izuku turned his attention to the mirror and was startled by the intense gaze from Toshinori. He leaned back in his seat, looking out the window to escape the scrutiny. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived home. Inko turned off the car but remained still. The four of them sat in silence until Toshinori finally spoke. Izumi, go ahead and go in. Izumi grabbed her backpack and exited the car, leaving Izuku, Inko, and Toshinori alone. Your thoughts in this silence are getting on my nerves. Then leave. I wish I could, but someone won't let me go. You say that as if I want you here. What do you mean, can't let you go? I never asked you to be here. I'm still waiting for an answer, Izuku said, frustration creeping into his voice. I don't have to tell you anything, came the curt reply. Yet here you are. But for your amusement. Like I said, I don't have a choice. There you go again, avoiding my questions. And there you go again, not understanding that I don't have to tell you anything. Izuku sighed and rolled his eyes. It's useless to talk to you, he whispered. What did you say? His father's voice cut through the tension. Izuku turned from the window, confusion etched on his face. Sorry. You heard what I asked. What did you say? And who are you calling useless? Inko interjected. It wasn't important and I wasn't calling anyone useless. You lied to your parents, a voice echoed in his mind. Did you really just say, gasp? Another voice chimed in. Yes. Why? Because you were calling me useless. Where did you get that from? Izuku quickly covered his mouth, realizing his mistake as he saw his parents' shocked expressions. I didn't mean to say that out loud. Silence hung in the air before Izuku spoke again. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're sorry. You should never call Inko useless when you're the one who's not living up to expectations. You're just a quirkless nobody who can't even hold an A in math. Toshinori's voice rose in anger. Izumi has been getting A's since grade school while you're struggling with B's, Inko added. I'm trying as hard as I can. Try harder. Why can't you be like Izumi? Have a quirk, perfect grades, and be a good child. In the midst of Inko's yelling, Izuku heard something that struck him deeply. All you've given us is a nightmare. Izuku looked at his father, who was now staring ahead. Huh, he said quietly. You heard exactly what I said. You've been getting into fights, not listening in class, and causing problems with your classmates. None of those things are my fault, Izuku replied. Don't you dare lie to our faces. How dare you lie about Izumi? You know she didn't do any of those things. What are you trying to do? Get attention? No, I'm not, Izuku insisted. You're raising your voice at her. Toshinori shouted. I'm not. I'm using my inside voice, Izuku argued. You're doing this for attention, aren't you? Inko pressed. No. When someone asks you a question, you answer. Don't just sit there. Toshinori's frustration boiled over. I'm answering. Answer my question, Deku. Inko yelled. Can everyone shut up? Izuku finally exploded, releasing the anger he had been holding in all day. Before he could say more, a loud noise echoed through the air. Smet. Izuku felt the sting on his right cheek where his father had slapped him. How dare you yell at us? Toshinori fumed. But I wouldn't have yelled if you would let me answer your questions and stop making assumptions. Izuku shot back. You are so disrespectful. Inko exclaimed. Your life, attitude, and mentality are disrespectful. Izuku yelled as he grabbed his backpack and opened the car door. Where do you think you're going? Toshinori demanded. Izuku ignored the question, slamming the door behind him as he stormed into the house. He ran straight to his bedroom, threw his backpack on the floor, and locked the door. He collapsed onto his bed, grabbing his pillow as tears began to sting his eyes. Can you shut up? He shouted at the voice in his head. Why should I? It replied. Because you're nothing and unimportant, he yelled back. Ouch, that hurt, the voice taunted, and Izuku felt a small sniffle escape him as his nose began to clog. His eyes watered, and he felt the pillow growing damp beneath him. He had endured so much that day, yet this was the first time he allowed himself to cry. Why does this world hate me? As he lay on his bed, he heard a loud noise from outside his room. Dad, don't. Since he wants to leave, then he doesn't get to leave, ever. Izuku got off his bed and approached the door, unlocking it and opening it slightly, only for it to be slammed shut. Anxiety surged through him as he struggled to understand what was happening. Dad? He called out. Shut up, useless. Toshinori yelled. Izuku tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. Bang. Something slammed against the door. Bang. His eyes widened as he realized what his father was doing. He began hitting the door, desperate to get out, but it was blocked. If you break down my door, I will break you. Toshinori shouted. For a moment, Izuku considered stopping, but he couldn't with the door blocking his way. Let me out, he cried. No. You left without permission. You don't get to leave your room until we say so. And if we find out you broke out, You're in big trouble. Inko yelled. Izuku didn't stop hitting the door. At first, he heard shouting from the other side, but the noise began to fade. His strength waned, and his fists grew lighter against the door. Eventually, he slid down the wall, tears in his eyes. He rubbed his eyes and noticed his vision turning red. Wiping his eyes on his shirt, he looked back at the door and saw the damage he had done. Blood splattered across the door, but there wasn't a single dent in sight. Izuku pulled his knees to his chest and began to cry silently, the voice in his head laughing at him. Bang! 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 It had been 3 days since Izuku was locked inside his room. Every day, he slammed his arm, in a cast, against the door, hoping it would break down. But no matter what he did, it wouldn't budge. He even resorted to kicking it with his feet, worsening the pain in his leg. His wrist throbbed from the repeated impact. Arg! Izuku yelled as he threw his last punch before collapsing to the ground. Dang kid. You sure know how to throw a punch. Too bad it's not working. I would go through the window if I were you. Oh, wait, you can't because it's bulletproof, and you're too weak to break it. If I were you, I would give up. What's up with you? Izuku asked. Nothing, how about you? First, you were all mysterious, then you started giving me advice, and now you're bringing me down. Pick one. Jesus kid, you don't have to yell. And if you're going to get upset with me, talk to me in your head, not out loud. Your family already thinks you're crazy, you don't need to give them any more reason. There you go again. You're being nice again. Look man, I'm just trying to do you a favor. If you want to do me a favor, then shut up and leave me alone. Trust me, you do not need to be more alone than you already are. Izuku didn't reply. He looked at the ground long enough to realize his room was dark. Glancing outside, he saw it was nighttime. It's night already? He used the wall for support as he stood up and walked to the window. The night sky was appealing, filled with stars and a full moon. He leaned against the window, observing the constellations and the dark shapes of birds flying by. He zoned out for a moment until he heard a car entering the driveway. He looked down to see his parents and Izumi getting out of the car. Izumi had a bag in her hand while Toshinori carried 3. They walked away from the car, and soon after, he heard the door open. Izuku slid down the wall, resting his head between his knees. Why does this world hate me so much? Have I not suffered enough? The more he asked himself, the sadder he became, and a tear threatened to fall. Don't you dare let that tear fall. Why should I listen to you? Because they don't deserve those tears. I know that. Then why are you doing it? You already know why. No, I don't. You're literally inside my head, so you do know why. Fine, I do know, but I want you to admit it to yourself. Say it out loud because you can't admit something without saying it. I don't want to. Why not? Because the reason is stupid. No, it's not. There you go again. Being nice. Don't try to switch the subject. Admit it. Admit why you are shedding tears almost every single night. Admit why you're not doing anything about it. Admit it. No. As soon as Izuku yelled, he covered his mouth and watched the door, waiting for a response. Hoping for someone to acknowledge him, he heard nothing. He took his hand off his mouth and let the tension go. Too soon. What do you mean to? Boom. Izuku jumped from the sudden bang on the door. Quit yelling. Toshinori yelled. Izuku gripped his shirt from the sudden outburst. I will go in there the next time you yell. Silence fell in his room, with little tapping sounds fading as Toshinori walked away from the door. Still shaken from the yelling, Izuku leaned against the wall, remaining on guard. You were right, it was too soon. I know I was. I could tell he was coming. How? I have good instincts. You should listen to yours. Ichim, I guess. Aren't you tired? Ichim? Aren't you tired of being weak? Yes. Then why aren't you trying to get stronger? Because. Izuku stopped speaking, beginning to think but unable to find an answer. All his life, he had let people step all over him and had done nothing about it. 3 nights ago, he witnessed a complete stranger defend him for the first time. But he didn't want to admit it. Izuku, I know you know the reason why you are in this mess in the first place. Because I was diagnosed quirkless. Funny, but no. I know you know exactly why. Izuku remained silent. Admit it. I already admitted it. No, you didn't. I want you to say the full thing. I want you to say it out loud. Whisper it if you're that embarrassed. Say it. I don't see the point in all of this. The point is for you to admit it. You don't have to admit it to someone else. You can admit it to yourself, so say, IT. Or you will be a weakling forever. The same kid who will always know he is the weakest individual there is. The same kid who can't defend himself from his own parents. The same kid who feels abandoned by his own sister. The same kid who is currently locked in his room with no way out. The voice continued on, but Izuku did not budge. As much as it provoked him, he remained silent because, I see you don't want to believe it. You're not saying anything because you refuse to accept it, even though you know it's true. Izuku stayed quiet. Pitiful. Just pitiful. Fine, don't talk, but I will say this. If you want to get stronger, I know how, but I won't tell you until you say it out loud. 20 minutes went by, and not a single word was spoken. Izuku was still in the same position, and his stomach began to growl. He crawled to his closet and opened it, reaching far inside until he pulled out a box full of snacks. He rummaged through it until he found his favorite chips, blue Doritos. A smirk crossed his face as he pushed the box back into the closet and closed the door. He walked to his bed, opened the bag, and reached in for one when he heard a loud noise coming from outside his door. Quickly, he ate the chips and hid them under his bed. By the time he sat back up, his father opened the door, anger evident in his eyes. You're in luck. Clean yourself up and go to bed. You have school tomorrow, and I want you out of the house at 6 o'clock sharp. Okay, Izuku replied. And if you utter a single word about any of this, Toshinori said, stepping closer until they were face to face, you will wish I never got a phone call. There was a long silence before Toshinori stepped away and left the room. Have I not suffered enough? The next day, Izuku woke up to the sound of something hitting his window. Rubbing his eyes, he saw a bird pecking at the glass. Seriously? It's too early for this. He glanced at his alarm clock. It was 5 a.m. Right, school. He sat there for a moment before getting out of bed. Flicking on the light, he was startled by the sight of his door, covered in scratch marks, dents, and small spots of dried blood. He walked over and placed his hand on it, sliding his fingertips over the marks. He didn't think of anything. His actions had been driven by panic, and any other teenager in his position would have reacted the same way. Yet he waited not for someone to come through, but for the voice to say something. I guess he won't talk. He walked to the bathroom and opened the cabinet, extending his arm to see his knuckles covered in dry blood with numerous cuts. After grabbing his toothbrush and toothpaste, he took care of his wounds. Checking the time, he saw he had 30 minutes before he needed to leave. Seizing the opportunity, he grabbed something to eat before heading out. Izuku walked for about 30 minutes to school, arriving an hour early. Standing in front of the school, he noticed a car pull up. He tensed, waiting for the person to exit the vehicle. Once they did, he relaxed upon hearing a familiar voice. Izuku, it has been a while. How have you been? Mr. Aoi asked. Izuku smiled and replied that he was doing well. How about you? Same old, same old. Getting up early and preparing for class. Why are you here so early? My parents told me to leave the house before 6. And not your sister? Not this time, but it's okay. I'm used to it. Mr. Aoi gave him a sympathetic smile as he turned off the car. He grabbed his bag from the back and walked to the gate, looking back at Izuku. Aren't you coming in? Oh yeah, Izuku replied, following him inside. They entered the classroom, and Izuku went straight to his seat in the corner while Mr. Aoi laid down on his desk. They sat in silence until Izuku remembered about the work he had missed. Mr. Aoi, can I get the assignments I missed? Mr. Aoi looked at him with a confused expression. Your sister didn't give you your work? Izuku shook his head. Mr. Aoi sighed, looking back at the ceiling. Don't worry about it. I'll let it slide, but I will have a talk with Izumi. No, you don't have to. But I should. I told her to give you your work, and she didn't follow through. This affects your grades, and she didn't seem to care about your situation. Just like your classmates. A long silence followed before Mr. Aoi let out a small chuckle. Sorry. I guess I'm still tired. Stayed up all night grading papers. Another silence fell before Izuku spoke. Mr. Aoi, I appreciate your help, but I can handle it myself. You don't need to talk to Izumi, I can handle my own battles. I don't need your protection. It is my job to. I don't care if it is your job. I want to stop helping me, so stop. Izuku exclaimed, frustration evident in his voice. Why? Mr. Aoi asked, genuinely curious. Because I need to learn how to fight my own battles and stop letting people take charge of my life. If that's the case, then why haven't Katsuki, Katsumi, and the others left you alone? Why are you still getting bullied? Why are you still getting hurt? Mr. Aoi pressed. There was a long silence, and Mr. Aoi noticed Izuku's head hanging low. He sat up on the desk, arms folded in front of his chest. When I was your age, I was built. For the longest time, I wanted to protect myself, but I couldn't do it. How come? Izuku asked, intrigued. Because I didn't listen to the signs. Mr. Aoi got off the desk, pulled a chair behind him, and sat in front of Izuku. We all have that mindset that we can do anything without help, but that's not how it works. In everything we do, we always need help. I needed help to talk, walk, eat with silverware, get dressed, learn to read, and many other things. We all need help in different areas of our lives, and protection happens to be one. Izuku remained silent, and Mr. Aoi did too. After a moment, Mr. Aoi patted the desk and stood up. He walked to his desk when he heard a sniffle. Turning back, he saw Izuku shaking, silent tears escaping. Mr. Aoi walked over, sat next to him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. What do you hate? He asked gently. I hate that I am weak. I hate that I can't protect myself. I hate that I can't do anything to save my life. I don't want to rely on others to help me. I want to be stronger, and I am so tired of being weak. Mr. Aoi looked at Izuku with sympathy, leaning against his desk. Everyone wants to be strong, but it requires work. People who are weak rely on others too. Everyone needs a shoulder to lean on, you just haven't found the one that feels comfortable yet. Until you find that shoulder, sleep on a pillow. Izuku didn't look up from his desk, and the tears that had been threatening finally fell. He suppressed his cries, his shoulders shaking. Mr. Aoi smiled and placed a tissue box in front of him. Clean yourself up, the students are about to come in soon. He returned to his desk. Don't be afraid to talk to me. I'm here if you need me. As school began, Izuku received stares from the other students, was called names, and faced harassment from Katsuki and his crew. Despite his hope that Izumi might help, he knew better than to expect it. He felt someone staring at him from a distance but tried to ignore it, until Katsuki kicked him into the lockers in the hallway, prompting laughter from those around. How's your wrist doing, Deku? Katsumi taunted, grabbing his wrist, which was in a cast, and using her quirk to apply heat. Izuku winced and tried to pull away. Let go, he pleaded, but one of Katsuki's friends kicked him in the side. Izuku groaned, still struggling against Katsumi's grip. Quit fighting or this will hurt worse, she grinned. Before she could do any more damage, Mr. Aoi pushed through the crowd and shouted at Katsuki and Katsumi. Bakugo twins and their friends. The principal's office, now. Katsumi shot Izuku a look before releasing his hand. They walked off, leaving Mr. Aoi, the other students, and Izuku behind. The rest of you all have 5 seconds to get to class. Mr. Aoi commanded, and the students scrambled to comply, leaving just him and Izuku. Mr. Aoi approached Izuku and offered his hand. Hesitantly, Izuku took it and stood, but his legs gave out after a few seconds. Mr. Aoi quickly supported him, helping him to his feet. Let's go to the nurse's office. Izuku sighed but didn't respond. He glanced at his cast, noticing burnt spots around it. As he dropped his arm, he saw Izumi standing nearby, holding his bag and books. They exchanged a silent moment before Izuku looked away first, surprising Izumi. She raised her hand, signaling for him to take his bag. Slowly, she approached and placed it in his hands. He threw it over his shoulder without meeting her gaze, then signaled for Mr. Aoi to continue to the nurse's office. At the end of the school day, while everyone else left with friends, Izuku stayed behind to collect his missed work. You don't have to turn all of this in by tomorrow. You have until the next 2 weeks, Mr. Aoi said. Thank you, Mr. Aoi, Izuku replied. How's your ankle? Mr. Aoi asked. It's doing better. Alright, well, stay safe, Mr. Aoi said. Izuku smiled and walked out of the classroom, down the stairs, and exited the school to see someone he least expected. I'm home. Are you going to help me now? Izuku asked, his voice echoing in the empty house. Don't rely on others, the voice replied. Izuku paused, taken aback. What? You heard me. Don't rely on others. That's it? You're not going to give me special abilities? Instructions? Just some wisdom? Yeah. That's all the help you're going to get for now. Wait a minute, you made me do all of this just to tell me that? Yup, goodbye. Huh. Izuku expected a reply, but silence followed. Frustrated, he kicked his backpack against the wall. He had done what was required of him, and all he received in return was a vague piece of advice. He looked out the window, staring at the vibrant orange sky mixed with pink and yellow hues. Dark figures in the shape of birds flew in a triangle formation, moving as one. How could the birds rely on each other, but he couldn't? He glanced down the driveway, noticing Izumi was still absent. Pulling out his watch, he saw it was almost 6 o'clock. She should be here by now. Checking his phone, he opened the Find My Phone app. He saw her icon moving quickly. She was in a vehicle. As the icon approached the house, he looked out the window and spotted his father's car pulling into the driveway. Panic surged through him. He knew what was coming next and wanted to avoid it. Quickly, he ran to his bedroom door and locked it, pushing his desk in front of it for extra security. The sound of the front door swinging open echoed through the house, followed by heavy footsteps approaching his room. Izuku's heart raced as he scanned his surroundings for something to defend himself with. He spotted a screwdriver in his closet and grabbed it, hoping it would be enough. With determination, he swung the screwdriver at the window, expecting it to shatter. Instead, he only saw a small crack form in the corner. Stomp, stomp. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and Izuku's blood ran cold. He needed a plan, fast. Izuku raised his hand for another swing when he heard someone yell from the other side. You little brat. He recognized his father's voice and quickly swung at the crack that had formed at the bottom of the door. The crack widened slightly with each swing, but he felt time slipping away. Come on. You stupid door. Just then, he heard Izumi's voice. Dad, don't. Another voice followed, commanding, let go of your father. I won't let you hurt Izuku. Izuku's eyes widened as he realized Izumi was trying to protect him from their father. A part of him wanted to surrender to avoid putting her in danger, but another part urged him to break free and escape. He moved the desk aside and reached for the doorknob, but his hand froze. Let me go, he thought desperately. I'm not going to let you make a dumb decision, a voice in his head replied. I have to help her, he insisted. After everything she did to you, the voice countered. She is my sister. Well, she's not acting like it. I don't care. Let him. Suddenly, a loud smack echoed through the door. Izuku's heart raced with worry and anger. He realized Izumi had been hurt. Fueled by rage, he unlocked the door and flung it open. He found Izumi on the ground, holding her cheek, while Toshinori stood with his back turned and Inko covered her mouth in shock. Izumi, Izuku began, but Toshinori felt the impact of Izuku's punch before he could finish. Toshinori stumbled forward, hitting the wall before collapsing to the ground. Inko, are you okay? She asked, her voice filled with concern. What was? Toshinori started, but Izuku was already on him again, delivering punch after punch. He couldn't stop, not when he saw his sister hurt and their father responsible. Finally, he paused, glaring at Toshinori. How dare you put your hands on my sister? What gave you the right? Toshinori couldn't respond, blood streaming down his face. Answer me. Izuku shouted. He didn't hit her. Inko interjected, her face pale with horror. He didn't hit her, she repeated softly. Izuku released Toshinori, letting him slump to the ground. You hit her, he demanded, stepping toward Inko, who instinctively backed away. Why would you hit her? Izuku, put the screwdriver down. I asked you a question, he interrupted. Inko hesitated, unable to articulate her reasoning. Frustrated, Izuku turned back to Toshinori, who was barely conscious. He grabbed his collar and lifted him. If you don't answer my question in 10 seconds, I will knock you out. Inko finally spoke. I hit her because she was in the way. Izuku stopped, his fist hovering just inches from Toshinori's face. And that gave you the right how? I don't know. I just did it without thinking. She was being stubborn and wouldn't let go, so I slapped her, Izuku finished, his voice cold. He then slapped Toshinori to wake him up. Toshinori regained his senses, looking at Izuku with a mix of fear and disgust. I will call the police on you, and you will get arrested. Izuku chuckled. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Why shouldn't we? Inko asked, confused. If they come here to arrest me, they will have to investigate. They might put me in HNDCFFS, but you will be in HNDCFFS too. What makes you so sure about that? Toshinori challenged. For starters, they will ask what provoked me, a minor, to act this way. They'll see the blood on the door and the marks where you barricaded it. I have pictures, so there's no hiding it. And the bruises you left on me from before? They'll see those too. Both parents fell silent, realizing the precarious position they were in. Izumi sat behind Izuku, shaken by the scene unfolding before her. She had never seen her brother like this. He was usually the one bringing positivity into their lives. Recently, he had grown colder towards her, but he still did what she expected. After their conversation at the nurse's office that night, it was clear he was going to change. But this was on a whole other level. Inko and Toshinori remained silent as they looked at Izuku. Do you still want to call them? They asked. When he didn't respond, they continued, that's what I thought. Now get out of my face. Inko helped Toshinori up and guided him towards their bedroom. Izuku yelled at them, causing them to freeze. If you put your hands on Izumi again, I won't stop at 10 punches. Inko and Toshinori quickly walked to their room and shut the door behind them. Once they were out of sight, Izuku crouched down to Izumi's level and offered his hand. Are you okay? Izumi looked at Izuku with a mix of disgust and confusion. I don't recognize you anymore. She slapped his hand away and stood up on her own. Stay away from me. Once again she turned her back on him, but this time it didn't hurt. In fact, it felt liberating. Everything that had happened felt good. The next morning, Izuku woke up at exactly 5 o'clock. He felt somewhat refreshed, though he wasn't sure why. He went through his morning routine and got dressed. As he did, he noticed small spots of blood on his cast. The stains weren't very noticeable, but they could catch someone's eye if they looked closely. Thankfully, his cast was dark gray. Once he finished getting ready, he left the house without looking back. On the staircase, Izumi sat, worried about him and trying to understand what had upset him. What's going on with you, Izuku? She thought. Izuku walked for a while and arrived at the same spot he had left the previous time. He sat against the wall and closed his eyes, vividly recalling the moment he hit Toshinori. He remembered every punch, the adrenaline, the feeling of his fist making contact, and then he realized he felt emotionless. The sadness and anger were absent. Despite everything, he felt a sense of pride for having protected someone. Izuku slowly opened his eyes when he heard a car pull up. Mr. Aoi stepped out and approached him. Good morning, Mr. Izuku. How are you? I'm all right. How about you? Izuku replied. Tired. Stayed up all night grading tests, but it's finished. Must be tiring as a teacher, Izuku said as he stood up. It is, Mr. Aoi agreed, unlocking the gate and letting Izuku go in first. How was the homework? It wasn't too confusing, was it? I was able to figure it out. Mr. Aoi reached the classroom door and inserted the key. Izumi didn't help you? She won't be talking to me for a while. Mr. Aoi opened the door and let Izuku enter, closing it behind him. Izuku placed his bag at his desk. Something happened? Mr. Aoi asked, noticing Izuku's silence but respecting it. He laid on the desk in front of the classroom. Izuku looked back at him. Why do you lay on the table? My classroom, my rules, Mr. Aoi replied nonchalantly. Izuku chuckled, sat at his seat, and gazed out the window. Mr. Aoi sat up with a groan. Why do you look out the window? I like to look at nice things when I'm thinking. Plus, it's personal. Mr. Aoi sighed, clearly concerned. I don't know what is going on at home, but I don't like how it affects you. Have you thought about reporting them to the police? If you need help with that, I could lend a hand. I don't need help from you, or the police, or anyone, Izuku replied firmly. You do. No, I don't. Izuku slammed his hand on the table, standing up as his chair screeched against the floor. I don't want you to report to the police. Silence fell between them as Izuku locked eyes with Mr. Aoi, feeling a tear form but refusing to let it blur his vision. He wanted certain things to happen, but he wanted to handle them himself, not rely on someone else. Mr. Aoi observed Izuku's body language, anger, annoyance, and a sense of being lost. You just gave me my answer. Izuku's expression remained unchanged as he asked, What are you talking about? You're being hit hard, aren't you? No, Izuku replied. Why did it take you so long to answer? Izuku stayed silent. Something happened last night, didn't it? Mr. Aoi pressed, but Izuku remained quiet. That's it, Mr. Aoi said, getting off the desk and walking towards the door. I'm calling the school administrator to report this situation. Izuku snapped out of his silence and ran to block Mr. Aoi's way. Get out of my way, Izuku, Mr. Aoi insisted. I won't. Why are you protecting them? Why are you willing to endure all of this? Mr. Aoi asked urgently. Because Izumi needs them. If you call them and tell them, Izumi will have no one left. Katsumi and Katsuki are not kind, everyone at school pretty much ignores her, and she doesn't want anything to do with me. She has a strong bond with them. And I don't want to be the reason it breaks. Mr. Aoi observed Izuku's expression shift, his demeanor changing. His arms dropped, his breathing slowed, and his voice trembled. I can still tell the authorities about this. You don't have proof of the abuse. Izuku countered, looking directly at Mr. Aoi. You need physical proof for the officers to act. Mr. Aoi regarded Izuku with disbelief. He couldn't fathom why Izuku would endure such pain for his sister, yet he understood it was a brother's instinct to protect those they love. As much as Mr. Aoi wanted to push past Izuku and report the situation, he realized Izuku was right. Without consent for a physical exam, there was little he could do. He stepped back from the door and sat on his desk. Fine. But you have to promise me one thing. He pulled out a piece of paper, scribbled something on it, and held it out for Izuku. If anything happens, call this number. It's my personal phone number. Izuku eyed Mr. Aoi with suspicion. He could see the concern in Mr. Aoi's eyes, but he sensed reluctance about involving the authorities just yet. I'll call this number right now, Izuku said as he took the paper. Why now? Just to see if it works, Izuku replied. Mr. Aoi didn't argue and allowed Izuku to call his phone. Izuku pulled out his phone and dialed the number. Mr. Aoi's phone rang. Now that you know it's my phone, I'll save your number in my contacts. You can do the same for me. There was a long pause before Izuku turned off his phone and hung up. Yeah, I'll make sure to do that. Mr. Aoi smiled slightly and placed his phone on the desk. The students are getting ready to arrive. Go ahead and sit at your seat. Izuku followed his instructions and sat down, resting his face on his hand as he stared out the window. I can't lose this number. As the day ended, students gathered with their friends and quickly left the classroom. Izuku was the last to exit. Today had been calmer than usual, likely because neither of the Bakugo twins were present. That was a relief for him and the other students who faced bullying. However, it didn't change the fact that he still faced teasing from others. As he walked down the hallway, he spotted Izumi standing with her lunchbox. He said nothing and continued walking. Izumi sensed his mood and fell into step beside him in silence. Once home, Izuku headed straight to their room. Izumi wanted to talk, but she recalled her words from the previous night. "Stay away from me." Those words haunted her, and she regretted saying them. Izuku dropped his things by his bed and gazed out the window. "I haven't been out in a while." He noticed his tennis shoes lying in the closet. He stood there for a moment before putting them on, then decided to change out of his school clothes. He slipped into black jeans, a white t-shirt, and a black coat before stepping out of his room, only to find Izumi blocking the door. She looked down, startled by the door opening, and then met his gaze with a mix of surprise and uncertainty. They stared at each other until Izuku broke the silence. "You need something?" Izumi struggled to find the words, still reflecting on her earlier statement. Izuku waited patiently, but when it became clear she wouldn't speak, he said, "If you're not going to say anything, then I'm going to leave." He stepped to the side and walked past her. Izumi looked at Izuku, glancing at his wrist. "Should I?" Izuku felt her gaze and tucked his hands into his pockets. He paused, looking back at her one last time. "You got one last chance. What do you need?" Izumi froze, struggling to find the words. An idea flickered in her mind, but she couldn't voice it. "I am." Izuku rolled his eyes and walked away, leaving Izumi behind. She fell to her knees, disbelief washing over her. Why couldn't she say anything? She had never struggled like this before. Confusion enveloped her as she pondered the situation. Am I not scared of him? Izuku walked for what felt like hours in the cool air. The trees swayed in the breeze, birds chirped, and the chatter around him was mild. He strolled along the sidewalk, looking down, unnoticed by others who were busy on their phones. As he approached a crosswalk, he waited with other adults. A middle-aged woman held her daughter's hand, and the little girl looked up and waved at him. Izuku hesitantly returned the smile, making her beam. Before he could greet her, the mother tugged the girl forward. The crosswalk sign turned green, and everyone hurried across the street. As he walked, Izuku dropped his phone. Crouching to pick it up, he noticed an elderly woman moving slowly with a cane. The timer on the crosswalk showed 10 seconds. Instead of rushing with the crowd, he returned to her side, blocking traffic. He matched her pace, ignoring the honks from cars. Once they reached the other side, Izuku smiled at her. "Have a good day, ma'am." She tapped his hand and he turned back. "You are kind, young man. Thank you for helping me." "No problem," Izuku replied. "There's no need to buy me anything. I just wanted to help." "If you say so," she said, turning away. "Safe travels." He nodded and continued on his way. As he walked along the sidewalk, it led him to the beach, which was littered with trash. No one visited anymore due to the mess. He stood there, gazing at the horizon as the sun set, the water shifting from dark blue to reddish orange. He enjoyed the view and felt a rare sense of peace. I should come here more often. 2 weeks later. It had been 2 weeks since the fight, since he last spoke to Izumi, and since he heard the mysterious voice in his head. He stood at the same spot on the beach, reflecting on the past weeks and his conversations with Mr. Aoi. They had shared both fun and serious discussions. Mr. Aoi wanted to go to the authorities, but Izuku hesitated, not wanting it to escalate. Mr. Aoi understood but didn't press him further. Izuku contemplated his situation: bullying at school, neglect at home, and silence from Izumi. He felt alone and considered running away. But where would he go? After a while, he decided it was time to head home. As he turned to leave, a loud crash startled him. He looked back but saw nothing. In his peripheral vision, he noticed something shift among the trash. "What was that?" he whispered. While he was looking at Izumi's diary, puzzled about how someone had obtained it, an anonymous texter messaged him again. "I see you found the diary and are wondering, how did this person get it? Well, that's not important. What's important is what's inside, and it's intriguing. I'll give you a little teaser." Moments later, an image appeared on his screen, one of the diary pages. "Dear diary, today has been rough. The morning was normal. I had lunch, attended classes, and watched Izuku get his arm broken by Katsuki. I'm surprised he wasn't hurt more, but I can't shake the vision of him looking at me all the time. It's so annoying and I wish he would stop. So, I decided to tell him to leave me alone and stay away from me. Reflecting on it now, I still can't believe I used my quirk on him just to make a point. Some might think what I did was wrong, but if they were in my position, they would have done the same. I am tired of him following me around like a puppy, so I handled it. I'm so happy to finally be free from his following. Izuku finished reading the diary and did not move. He felt paralyzed, his hand at a right angle, eyes focused on the screen. He couldn't sit down. Izuku had tried to forget about the situation, but now he felt upset, even though he understood why she did it. He couldn't blame her for her actions. Izuku agreed with Izumi. It would be annoying to have a sibling who is quirkless and doesn't leave you alone, but she didn't have to use her quirk. While he stood there, staring at his phone, a message came through. As you can see, she did not want you around, and it's clear she doesn't want you. You think this is bad? I haven't even reached the surface. If you want to know what else she said, let me know. It was tempting. Someone had pictures of their sibling's diary, filled with secrets and feelings, and was willing to share. Who wouldn't want to see more? But despite the temptation, Izuku couldn't invade her privacy. I'm trying to help you, you know? He read the message and did nothing. It was still tempting, but he didn't want to invade her privacy. It was a diary, after all, something you shouldn't look through without permission. Having it right in front of him was challenging, but he reminded himself, it's not my place to look through. I don't know your motive or how you got her diary, but I will tell you this. Leave me and Izumi alone. Funny how you refer to her as Izumi, but not as sister. Izuku chose not to reply. Fine, but if you want to see more, you know where to find me. He waited patiently for the person to text again, but they didn't. They left the chat, and he was left wondering who they were and how they got her diary. The only person he had given his number to was Mr. Aoi, and that wasn't his number. Izuku got off his phone and looked outside. It was dark, probably past 6 o'clock. He went to the bathroom for a quick shower. Once finished, he walked out with a towel around his neck and clothes on. As he walked, he glanced at Izumi's open bedroom door. It was tempting to go in and look through her diary. He already knew where it was, and her room was unattended. He hesitated but took a step forward, then another, until he reached the entrance of her bedroom. He listened carefully and heard something tapping. Maybe they were eating. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. He walked straight to where he knew Izumi hid her diary, under a loose floorboard. When they were younger, they had accidentally dislodged one of the wood planks, creating a small pit beneath it where she hid snacks and her diary. He knelt down, pulled up the wooden plank, and reached in to retrieve her diary. He wiped his hand over the cover, which was dark pink with an indent that read, "Don't touch." Izuku smirked at the writing, remembering how hard she had worked to get it there. But as he rubbed his hand over the indent, his smile faded. He glanced back at the door, ensuring no one was coming, then turned his attention to the diary and slowly opened it to the first page. It was nothing special, clearly written by a child. He chuckled softly when he noticed she had misspelled playing. It was adorable, but he had a mission to accomplish. He flipped through the pages until he reached page. His eyes scanned the paper as he read. "Dear Diary, it has been officially 2 weeks and a lot has happened. I watched Izuku get beat up by the Bakugo twins and wished it never happened. As much as he annoys me, I still did not want him to get hurt. It would be wrong for me to step into something that does not concern me, but it is even more wrong for me to not step in and protect my brother. I can't really say that he is my brother because I haven't been around him much. I don't remember the last time we had a sister-brother bonding time. It SCKS, but I can't complain. I have better things to do than worry about him. As long as UA is in the palm of my hands, there's nothing that will stop me, not even Izuku." Izuku paused after reading the page. It stung a little, but he couldn't blame her. She had a brighter future ahead, and he didn't expect her to reach out when their parents had kept them apart. Still, it didn't hurt to try for once. Izuku is always the one who puts effort into keeping their sibling relationship together, but it takes both parties to maintain it. As he flipped through the pages of his sister's diary, he noticed that many entries mentioned him, some positive, some negative, and others that seemed nice but were actually hurtful. His hands began to sweat as he continued skimming through the pages, finally arriving at the entry sent to him anonymously. He lightly ran his hand over the paper, hoping the sender was lying, but it seemed that was too much to ask. As he read on, he noticed a shift in tone. "Dear Diary, I don't know how to even start. So much has happened tonight, and I don't know if I should be writing this. But I'm here now, so I might as well finish. I just saw a side of Izuku that I wished I had never seen. The anger in his eyes, the blunt aura that screamed aggression. I never knew he hated our dad that much, and I didn't know he could hold so much anger. There was so much chaos that night. When Izuku warned our parents not to hurt me, I was still in shock. As soon as they left the room, he tried to help me up, and I did the one thing I wished I hadn't. I swatted his hand away and told him to stay away from me. I know it was a stupid decision, but I just couldn't be close to him after what just happened. I don't regret it, but looking back, I wish I hadn't." Izuku remembered that night vividly. He wanted to be upset that she had pushed him away, but could anyone blame her? She had just witnessed their father being confronted by her quirkless brother. It was unexpected, especially after he had been told to leave her alone. As he turned to the next page, he noticed it was thicker than the others. Realizing it was glued together, he searched Izumi's desk and found some scissors. Carefully, he opened the page enough to read it. "That's it. I'm leaving," Izuku said, slamming the diary on the ground in frustration. He couldn't believe his father would do this to him. He knew he was quirkless and wanted to become a pro-hero, yet his father seemed to prioritize Izumi over him. Feeling betrayed, he walked to his room and quickly got on his knees, reaching under his bed to pull out a duffel bag. He checked to make sure he had clothes, snacks, water, and money before zipping it up. Just then he received a notification. It was the same anonymous number texting him again. He hesitated before opening the message. Well. It looks like you found out on your own. I didn't expect you to look through her diary. I guess your assumptions can change." Izuku quickly replied, "Who are you, and how do you know I just looked through her diary? You'll find out sooner or later. I can tell based on how you rushed into your room." Izuku's eyes widened, and he quickly closed his blinds and curtains, ensuring he was alone. He turned back to his phone. "Who are you? You'll find out soon enough. You will once you go to this address, 1234. Izuku stared at the address, confused. "Why would I go there?" "Because you have nowhere else to go. There's a bed, food, TV, and it's a shelter." Izuku paused. "Why are you helping me?" "I told you, I want to, and we are the same. I don't know who you are." After sending that message, he received no reply. He took a moment before returning to his. But once he ensured he had everything, he slung it over his shoulder and headed for the window. Just as he was about to unlatch it, he stopped and turned around, an idea forming in his mind. He dropped the bag and walked straight to Izumi's room, not caring about the noise he made. He picked up the diary, flipped to the page, and tore it out. Grabbing the scissors again, he pinned the paper to the wall before leaving the room as it was. Now, Izuku walked down the street in sweats, a hoodie, and sneakers, keeping his head down. The same question echoed in his mind. Why? But. The more he asked himself, the louder it became, and he found himself speaking the words aloud. "I've been your #1 supporter, and you do this to me? I hate her. I hate them. I hate everyone. There's no such thing as a hero. Only fakers." Izuku kicked the trash can next to him in frustration. He was overwhelmed by anger when his phone buzzed again. Grabbing it aggressively, he turned it on, exasperated by the persistent anonymous caller. Enough was enough. He called the number, and it rang until someone picked up. "I don't know who you are, and I don't trust you. Stop texting me," he yelled before hanging up and throwing the phone to the ground, stomping on it in frustration. He tossed his bag aside and grabbed a water bottle, pouring it over the phone. "Now leave me alone." As he started to walk away, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He swatted it away and turned to see a man in a hoodie. "Sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you. I just wanted to tell you to stop yelling and pick up my trash can," the man said. Izuku cleared his throat, glancing at the trash can lying on its side. Sorry." He picked it up and adjusted the bag on his shoulder. "Sorry for disturbing you. You look young." What are you doing out here so late? The man asked. I'm just coming from a sleepover. Heading home now, Izuku replied softly. Huh. Izuku stared at the man and began to walk backwards slowly. Have a good night, sir. He quickened his pace as the man continued to watch him with a strange smile before disappearing back into the alley. After a while, Izuku found a building with its lights off. He opened the door and stepped inside, noticing the maroon walls and flickering lights. The reception area was empty, and he approached the table where a man sat, seemingly asleep. Excuse me, he called, but received no reply. The man was dressed in a button-up shirt and worn jeans, a cap obscuring his face. Izuku tapped the table gently, trying to wake him up, but the man didn't budge. Growing worried, he walked around the counter and cautiously tapped the man's shoulder. Are you okay? He asked. The man's head fell forward, rolling off the table. Izuku gasped and stumbled back, hitting the wall in shock. Just then, he felt something touch his shoulder again. He jumped and instinctively threw a punch at whatever was behind him. Dude, not cool, a voice exclaimed. Izuku blinked, realizing he had just punched someone else. Oh, you shouldn't have startled me, he retorted. It doesn't mean you hit people, the man replied, rubbing his forehead. Still, Izuku stammered. Whatever, man. What do you want? I just need a place to stay, Izuku admitted. The guy paused, looking him over with a scrutinizing gaze. After a moment, he grinned and extended his arm. Right this way. Izuku followed cautiously, glancing back to see where the man had gone. To his surprise, he was nowhere in sight. Confused, Izuku continued forward until he reached a wall. Huh, he murmured, looking around for the man. Turning back, he was startled to find the wall had vanished, revealing only darkness beyond. He rubbed his hand along the wall until he found a light stubby and flicked it on. To his shock, a blue-haired man sat at a bar, a glass in front of him. The man turned slightly, reaching for another glass. I thought you said you wouldn't come, he said. What are you talking about? Izuku asked, bewildered. You know exactly what I mean. The man lifted his phone and pressed a button. I don't know who you are, and I don't trust you. I'm not going to tell you again, stop texting me. Izuku's eyes widened as he realized it was the guy on the phone. He took a step back and felt nothing but a wall behind him. Scrambling his hand behind him, he felt the glass that had returned. I know you said you didn't want to come, but you're here, the man said, slightly slamming the glass filled with alcohol next to him. So you might as well sit down and have a friendly chat with me. Izuku remained frozen in place. I won't bite, the man added, taking a sip from his cup. Reluctantly, Izuku walked to the chair next to the mysterious man and sat down with a straight posture. I'm a minor, he stated. It didn't stop me from drinking, the man replied, taking another sip. Izuku stared at the cup, hesitant. Who are you? He asked. Do your parents know you left? The man inquired. They don't know. Why would I tell them? Izuku replied defensively. What about that teacher you always talk to? The man pressed. Izuku looked at him, feeling the weight of the conversation. What do you want? The man took another sip and slammed the cup onto the counter, startling Izuku. When I was your age, I was neglected by my father. He would hurt me and came up with every reason to justify it. My mother tried to help but wasn't allowed, and my sister stayed away because of what he put in her head. He poured more whiskey into his cup. Everything changed when my quirk manifested. I was having a breakdown in my backyard when my dog approached me. I picked him up and he turned to dust. My family witnessed it and rushed outside. I was so scared that I turned the whole ground to dust, including everything that touched it. He took a small sip from his glass. Among all of them, I regret what happened to my sister the most because she was a victim, not the source. Izuku placed his hand on the table, glancing at him as he offered his condolences. I don't want any of that, the man said. But do you know how we're alike? Izuku nodded slowly. That we both were neglected by our families. Ding, 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 the man replied. Is that the only reason you contacted me? No. I contacted you because I want you at my side. All might is no hero. Neither is Nizu, Sinper, or Endeavor, he said, taking a quick sip. We've both experienced unfairness in this world, so it's time for us to take a stand and make it right. That's why I reached out to you. Izuku noticed the man's facial features. His skin looked dry, his eyes wide, and his lips cracked. I need an ally, a partner if you will. The man lifted his glass to Izuku as an indication of a deal. What do you say? Join me? Izuku looked at the glass in front of him and then at the man. Memories of playing with his sister in the sandbox flooded his mind, the laughter they shared when they were younger. How much had changed since then? The vivid vision faded into the alcohol before him, reflecting his own uncertainty. Slowly, he reached for the cup, causing the man to grin. They tapped their glasses together, and the man drank the rest of his drink while Izuku took a cautious sip. The burning sensation in his throat made him pull the cup away, coughing. The man chuckled and extended his arm to Izuku. The name is Shigaraki. Izuku looked at Shigaraki's hand before taking it. He noticed the gloves he wore, likely related to his quirk. Shigaraki smirked. Glad you decided to join. Us? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. Just then he heard something shift behind him. He turned to look, still holding Shigaraki's hand, but saw nothing. He squinted and shrugged. I must be hearing the... Hello. Izuku jumped out of his seat, throwing the glass toward the sound. The person there quickly ducked, and the glass shattered behind them. Izuku watched as the figure stood up, hand on their head. Come on, man. That's the second time. Izuku recognized the man from the lobby and began shaking his hand frantically. Well, you shouldn't scare me, he exclaimed, glancing at Shigaraki, who was pouring another cup of whiskey, seemingly unfazed by the commotion. Who is this guy? Izuku asked. She's Toga. Another member of the team, Shigaraki replied without looking up. She. Izuku turned back to see the man slowly transforming into a shorter girl. Toga grinned and liked her teeth playfully. Shiggy, you didn't tell me he was a cutie, she said, walking toward Izuku slowly. As Toga approached, Izuku instinctively took a step back. Shigaraki stepped in between them, glass in hand. Looks don't matter, freak, he said, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. And you shouldn't be trying to get with your teammate. Toga pouted and walked over to the bar, sitting down at one of the chairs. Fine. Shigaraki took a long sip of his drink before introducing the two to each other. Izuku, this is Toga. Toga, this is Izuku. Toga smiled at Izuku and gave him a little wave. Izuku twitched his lip into a small smile before quickly returning to a neutral expression. He leaned back slightly to whisper to Shigaraki, Is this normal? Sadly, Shigaraki replied. My quirk is called Transform. I can shapeshift into anyone by simply drinking their blood, Toga said cheerfully. What's yours? I don't have one. I'm quirkless. Nice job, Shigaraki. Not only did you just recruit a child, but a useless one at that. Everyone turned to see Dabi stepping out of the shadows, arms crossed. His skin was scarred, with stitches running across his face, and his dark blue eyes seemed to pierce through the dim light. Izuku felt a nervous tremor in his hands but managed to maintain his composure. Dabi noticed and let out a deep chuckle. Looks like Broccoli is scared. Funny. Relax on the kid, will you? This is his first time here and meeting different people, Shigaraki said. This isn't a meet and greet, handyman. This is revenge, Dabi replied. Let loose, Dabi. No one is going to get in between your sweet, little revenge, Toga added. Dabi shot her a glare as he brushed past Izuku, bumping his shoulder and causing Izuku to step aside. Once Dabi left the room, Izuku turned to Shigaraki. What's his problem? He's just Mr. Perfection. Don't worry about him, Shigaraki replied, placing his drink on the counter. He gestured to Toga and Izuku. I'm leaving now, have fun. With that, Shigaraki exited, leaving Toga and Izuku alone. Toga noticed Izuku's nervousness and turned her chair slightly toward him. That was interesting, Izuku said, trying to break the silence. Yeah, but that's normal. I have a question for you. What's your story? Toga asked. Story? What made you the way you are now? Hating pro-heroes, Toga pressed. Oh, they are not who they say they are. They can easily manipulate the public and get away with every bad thing they do. Izuku paused, noticing Toga's serious expression. She was giving him her undivided attention, something he hadn't received from anyone other than Mr. Aoi. They can look like living gods for all of Japan but turn into something else the moment they close the haven gates and show their true colors. Izuku shifted in his seat next to Toga, who remained focused on him. He placed his bag on the ground and crossed his arms. The two people I trusted since I was born turned their backs on me once the results came through. They are the reason why I don't believe unconditional love is real. If they truly loved me and cared for me, I wouldn't be sitting in this seat right now. That's the same thing with me. I was outcast and categorized as a villain. All because of my quirk, Toga replied, turning her gaze to the array of drinks on the counter. The bright lights illuminated the various glass shapes, and the sound of dripping water echoed in the background. Toga reached for an empty glass and lightly traced the design with her finger. And my parents did not care for me after my quirk was revealed, she chuckled softly. Ironic, right? The pretty, pink princess happens to have a villainous quirk. Izuku felt a pang of sympathy for Toga. She had been judged not for who she was but for her quirk. In a way, he understood. He too had been labeled a weakling for being quirkless. She's just like me, he thought. After a long moment of silence, Izuku stood up and grabbed his bag. Where do I sleep? Toga smiled and gestured toward the dark hallway behind her. It's this way. Follow me. As they walked down the hallway, Izuku held his bag over his shoulder while Toga walked with her arms swaying. At the end of the hallway, Toga stepped aside and opened a door for Izuku. Here is your room. Izuku was surprised by how nice it looked. The king-sized bed, the black carpet with gold outlines, and the well-kept furniture contrasted sharply with the building's exterior. This was a perfect example of, don't judge a book by its cover. He walked to the bed and sat down, taking a deep breath as he lay back and felt the cool blanket against his hands. Toga noticed his contentment and smiled. Well, since you're quirkless, you have to learn how to fight. Izuku looked at her and replied, That's true. When do we start? Tomorrow. I'll wake you up. All right, Izuku said. Toga walked to the door and as she was closing it, said goodnight to Izuku. He smiled back and returned the sentiment. The next day, Izuku was still sleeping in bed when Toga snuck into his room, holding a big skillet and a metal spatula. She got very close to his ears and started banging the skillet with the spatula. Bang, bang, bang. Izuku yelled and fell out of bed. Toga moved aside to avoid him, bursting into laughter. Izuku lay on the ground, feeling the impact, and looked up at Toga, who was starting to tear up from laughing. He scowled at her as he got up. Glad you find it funny, he said, unimpressed. Toga wiped her tears and placed the skillet on the bed. Pointing the spatula at Izuku, she declared, It's time to train. Izuku glanced at the clock, which read 3:14. It's 3 in the morning. Why are we starting now? The sooner we start, the faster you'll learn to fight, Toga replied, lifting the spatula under his chin slightly. Be happy I didn't wake you up at midnight. She skipped out of the room, leaving Izuku groaning. He followed her with his hand behind his head, yawning occasionally. Once they reached the training room, Izuku looked around. The walls were covered in metals, and the floor had tiles. His gaze caught something bright red in the corner of the room. Blood. He stopped in his tracks, staring at the stain on the wall. Toga noticed he had halted and looked back to see what he was staring at. Staring at it won't make it go away, she said. Izuku turned to her, concern in his eyes. What happened? Training, she replied casually. Just training? He asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. Lesson number 1. Unlike the pro heroes, we train with blood, sweat, and tears. That's the only way to get strong in this world. Toga reached under her socks and pulled out a pocket knife. Lesson number 2. You can't improve unless you get hurt. 2 months had passed since Izuku began training, running away, and joining the League of Villains. He had been learning hand-to-hand combat and weapon use from Toga, who had been incredibly helpful and understanding. She helped him adjust to his new lifestyle and living space. which was a stark contrast to his experiences with Dabi. Dabi had been bitter towards him, ignoring and avoiding him at every turn. Despite Izuku's attempts to connect, Dabi remained closed off. One night, Izuku overheard Dabi and Shigaraki arguing about something he couldn't quite grasp, but he understood it involved revenge. Shigaraki was more social than Dabi, often talking to Izuku and always holding a glass of alcohol. He would share his philosophy on being the best and not worrying about others, insisting that everything had to be perfect. Izuku found himself growing bored of these conversations and drifting away from Shigaraki, questioning the obsession with perfection. He considered asking Toga about it but never did. In contrast, Kurogiri was cool and kept his distance, occasionally chatting with Izuku and being friendly. Kurogiri even helped him escape from Shigaraki when needed, and Izuku appreciated that. Overall, things were going well. For the most part. However, Izuku was haunted by memories from his past that surfaced unexpectedly. They were vivid and replayed in his mind, causing him to zone out at times. This particular day, he found himself lost in thought in the training room when, out of nowhere, he was punched in the face. Stumbling back, he held his cheek, trying to recover. Before he could fully regain his composure, Toga slammed him to the ground. "Get out of your head. This is not the time to think," she said firmly. "So, don't say you're sorry, just pay attention." She extended her hand for him to grab. Rule number 14, don't get in your head, or you'll be dead before you know it. In combat, thinking doesn't matter because you don't have enough time. Izuku took her hand, and she pulled him to his feet. He dusted off his shirt. "Right so." "Don't," Toga interrupted, closing her eyes and raising her hand. "You don't need to apologize all the time. You're still learning, and learners make mistakes. But now, what's going on? You don't usually mess up in this type of fighting." Izuku stared at her, drifting away from the moment. Memories," he replied, rubbing the back of his neck. Toga placed her hand on her hip, having heard him mention the memories before. "She shows empathy every time, but it's starting to affect his fighting. I understand the memories are hard to forget, but you need to move on. All it is doing is holding you back and getting in the way of your fighting. You don't want to be the one to fall in battle, do you?" Izuku shook his head. "Good. I'll go get you some water." Izuku said, "Okay," and she gave him a smile before she left the room. He was now alone and had nothing to do. He ended up pacing around the room with his hands behind his back. As he was thinking, he heard the door open. He looked back and saw someone he did not expect. "Dabi." Dabi looked at Izuku and made a grunt noise. "What are you doing here?" Dabi asked. "I was training with Toga." "He's weak," Dabi said as he turned away from Izuku. "Wait!" Izuku yelled for Dabi to turn around, but he didn't. Dabi left the room, ignoring him. Izuku let out a frustrated noise and rested his hand on his hip. "Why does this guy hate me so much?" Izuku ran to the door to catch Dabi. He reached for the door and heard sudden yelling. "What the?" He cracked open the door and peeked through the crack to see Dabi and Toga arguing. He wanted to stop them, but their body language told him it was serious. Izuku decided not to intervene and watched the altercation unfold. "Could you at least give him a chance?" Toga asked. "He's only a waste of space, so why should I?" Dabi replied. "Izuku is part of the team now, so deal with it." "Just because he's on the team doesn't mean I have to talk to him," Dabi shot back. "Will you give him a break?" Toga gestured to the door. "He's getting better at fighting, interacting with everyone easily, and improving as a teammate and a friend." Dabi started to chuckle and gave Toga a smirk. "You must be joking. He's your friend, not mine. I don't have to be nice to him. I am my own person, and if I want to have an issue with him, I will." "You have, once again, dodged the question," Toga said, throwing her hands up in frustration. Dabi got closer to Toga and pointed at her. "I don't have to answer you." Dabi's cold stare made her tense up. The glare was so intense it made Izuku nervous. Dabi walked away and disappeared around the corner. Toga let out a rough sigh and turned slowly to the door. Izuku quickly got back into the room and pretended nothing happened. When Toga opened the door, she stood there. "You were listening." "Listening to what?" Izuku asked. The doorknob is warm. I'm not stupid. Right. There was a long silence between them. Toga handed Izuku the water bottle, and he began to drink. Once he finished, he threw the bottle towards the wall and put his hands up. I'm ready. For months had gone by, and everything was the same. Shigaraki saying everything has to be perfect, while drinking. Kurogiri being friendly to Izuku. Dabi ignoring him and being rude. Toga helped Izuku train with his hands and with a weapon. It took Izuku a minute to figure out what type of weapon, but he settled on a dagger. Engaging in close combat with his enemies was his strongest area. He had gotten quicker and had better durability. It was perfect for him and he loved it. Izuku lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. It had been a long time since he thought about his past. It was good for him, and he was happy it was blocked out. In the midst of his thoughts, he heard a loud knock outside his door. Come in. The door opened and it was Dabi. Izuku sat up straight, confused. Come to the bar, Dabi interrupted, shutting the door behind him. Izuku stared at the door before getting out of bed and heading to the bar. Once he arrived, he looked around to see only Toga and Shigaraki. Dabi was nowhere to be found. Toga was sitting on one of the bar stools, and Shigaraki stood with his hands behind him. No alcohol? I decided to give it a break, Shigaraki replied, gesturing to the seat opposite Toga. Sit. Izuku went to the chair and sat down. He looked at Toga to read her expression, but she had a stern stare and did not move a muscle. What's this about? Izuku asked. You have been training for 6 months, and you have improved a lot, according to Toga. I believe it is time for you to start your next mission, Shigaraki replied. Izuku scrunched his forehead and looked at Toga. Mission? Yes, he clapped his hands together. We have found someone for you to confront. Toga grabbed a folder from the other side of the bar stool and handed it to Izuku. He observed the black folder and opened it slowly. He stopped in his tracks the moment his eyes locked onto the picture inside. I'm pretty sure you recognize who this is, Shigaraki said. Yet it's Kojiya, one of Bakugo's friends, Izuku replied. Yup. Shigaraki stepped closer to Izuku and pulled a chair in front of him. Your first mission is going to be someone from your past. Aren't you excited? This is your chance to confront one of the people who hurt you throughout middle school. He placed one of his hands on Izuku's shoulder, a smile on his face. It's time for you to get your revenge. Toga watched Izuku and Shigaraki's interaction, focusing mainly on Izuku. She noticed how tense he was as he analyzed the picture, sensing his nervousness and the memories that were resurfacing. To her surprise, he seemed to relax after a few seconds. His emotions were all over the place, but she could sense the steam rising from his head. Shigaraki removed his hand from Izuku's shoulder and crossed his arms in front of him. What do you say? Izuku stared at Shigaraki and replied. I'm ready. The door opened to the sound of laughter as 2 people exited a building. One appeared to be in his mid-20s, while the other looked quite young, like Kojiya. They walked out to the front of the building, each holding a cup. That was so much fun. We have to do it again. Kojiya exclaimed excitedly. I don't mind doing it again, but you can't tell anyone about me, the man replied. Don't worry. No one is going to know about you, Kojiya assured him, taking a big sip from his cup. The man placed a hand on Kojiya's shoulder and gently pushed the cup down with his other hand. Kojiya looked at him in confusion. What? Just take it easy. Drinking too much can get you in trouble, the man warned. Kojiya swatted his hand lightly and scoffed. Don't worry, I can handle it. This isn't my first rodeo. The man tapped Kojiya's shoulder and moved his hand away. All right, little man. See you Friday at the same time? For sure. The man waved to Kojiya and walked away into the darkness. Kojiya, distracted, walked into an alleyway next to the building they had just exited. Each step felt heavy, and his swaying and laughter indicated he was intoxicated. He leaned against a wall, chugged the rest of his drink, and tossed the cup onto the ground. Man, I'm out already. He turned to see a lady with her dog nearby. Hey doggy. The lady looked him over and shook her head disapprovingly. Kojia glanced down at his clothes, realizing he was still in his middle school uniform, now stained below his name tag. "Ah man. It's dirty." He tried rubbing it off, but it didn't work, so he looked around for something to clean it with. Hearing a clinking noise, he turned his attention to a glass bottle on the ground beneath the only light source in the dark alley. Curious, he walked closer until he was directly under the light. Falling to his knees, he realized it was a glass bottle full of water. As he reached for it, the lights suddenly went out. Kojia looked around for a moment before shrugging and going for it. He tried to open the bottle. "Come on, open." After struggling, he gave up. "I guess this shirt has to be thrown away." "Need help opening that?" A dark figure emerged behind him. Kojia could see the shape but not the face. "Please do. I need help with this so I can clean my shirt." The figure reached out and took the bottle, opening it with a swift motion. "Thanks, man." Splash. Kojia was drenched in water. He froze and looked up at the figure. "Why did you do that? You could have just given it to me." "Sorry. It slipped," the figure replied. Kojia grunted and reached for his shirt. "Thanks a lot," he said sarcastically, rubbing his shirt. Suddenly he screamed, "Oh, my... What did you do to me?" "I didn't do anything. I just gave you the water you wanted." "It burns." "Why does the water burn?" Kojia yelled, rubbing his eyes with his hands, realizing it wasn't helping. He sucked to his shirt, making it worse. Scratch. He managed to open his eyes a bit and saw a bright light in front of him, feeling heat radiating from it. He reached for it, but the figure moved it away. "It's hot." The figure handed him a piece of fabric. "Thanks," he said as he desperately wiped his face. Once he finished, he could finally see. "Finally. I can s..." He stopped as he noticed a fire on a piece of wood in front of him. "How did you do that?" Kojia asked. The figure chuckled. "You still haven't figured it out? How drunk could you possibly be?" Kojia was confused. "What are you saying?" "Kojia, take a nice, deep breath." "How do you know my name?" "Why should I?" Kojia paused, looking at his hands, one holding the fabric and the other still wet. He glanced at his shirt and clothes, shaking his head vigorously in panic. Kojia looked at the glass bottle in the dark figure's hand and snatched it. He examined the label closely, squinting until it became clear. Once it did, he threw it on the ground. "How dare you put this on me? Do you think this is some kind of joke?" "Huh." Kojia grabbed the dark figure's collar and pulled it close. "Answer M." He stopped, staring at the figure's face. His hands began to shake in fear and fell to the ground. "It can't be. You're reported dead." The dark figure stepped closer and squatted to his level, bringing a flickering flame towards his face. "Am I really dead?" "Deku," Kojia whispered. Izuku did not move, continuing to stare into his soul. "You really thought you could do everything to me and not pay the price? Ignorant of you." "I'm sorry. I know what I did was wrong and I can make it up. Do you want money? I can give you money. And other things." Kojia spoke frantically, feeling like he was on the brink of losing his mind. He hoped it was just his imagination. Izuku placed a finger to his lips, silencing him. "The only way you can make it up to me is by giving me your life." Kojia shook his head in fear, opposing the idea. "Please. I have a sister to look after." "That I don't care." Izuku tossed the burning wood onto Kojia's lap, and the fire spread rapidly. Kojia screamed in agony, rolling on the ground, desperate to extinguish the flames. The heat seared his feet, arms, and face. Izuku stared into Kojia's eyes with no remorse, emotionless and satisfied. He reveled in the pain Kojia was experiencing, feeling justified in his actions. As the screams quieted, Izuku giggled, knowing Kojia was dead. Suddenly, he heard something behind him. Turning around, he saw a teenager in a similar uniform to Kojia's. "Want to take a closer look?" Izuku asked. The girl stepped back, frightened. "If you run, I'll kill you too." She froze, looking at him in fear. "Come closer." When she hesitated, Izuku raised his voice, startling her into rushing forward. He smiled, though she couldn't see it, and pointed at the burnt remains. You see this? The girl nodded. This guy bullied me all my middle school life. Don't you think it's wrong to bully those who are weak? She nodded again. Use that voice of yours and answer my question, Izuku said coldly. Why yes. I'm glad you agree. Izuku stared at her with empty eyes. The girl was too afraid to break eye contact. No witnesses, a voice whispered in his ear. Izuku reached into his pocket and pulled out a dagger. The girl noticed and let out a shaky breath, looking up to see the danger in his eyes. No witnesses. In a flash, Izuku slashed the girl's throat. She grabbed her neck, blood gushing out. Falling to the ground, she struggled to breathe as Izuku watched her final moments. Looking at the bloody dagger in his hand and the fire beside him, he sucked the dagger to his other hand and covered his eyes with the bloodied one. I must be going crazy to actually enjoy this. He glanced at the two bodies and then at the entrance to the alleyway. Watch out Katsuki, Katsumi, Izumi, Inko and Toshinori. I'm coming for you all. Toga and Shigaraki sat at the bar with drinks in hand. Toga swirled her drink, lost in thought, while Shigaraki savored his. Do you think he's going to be okay? Toga asked. I don't really care if he's okay. All I care about is if he gets the job done, Shigaraki replied. You seriously don't care if he? Kojia is inexperienced and has no business being here if he fails, Shigaraki interrupted. Dabi walked in, waving his phone before tossing it to Toga. You're so worried about your little boyfriend. He then left the room. Toga was confused. Why did he give this to me? She looked at Shigaraki with uncertainty. Why are you looking at me? Look at it. She complied and glanced at the phone in her hand. The air seemed to leave her lungs as she saw the article about Kojia's death. He did it. He killed Kojia. Shigaraki stood up and walked behind her, observing the article with a grin. Kojia is not the only one gone. Toga took a closer look and noticed another name next to Kojia's, Gojiana. Please tell me I'm seeing things, she whispered to herself. Shigaraki leaned closer to her ear and whispered, You aren't. The door opened, and slow footsteps approached. They turned to see Izuku coming around the corner, a dagger in one hand and blood on his face. Looks like you had quite a fight, Shigaraki remarked. What do you mean? Izuku asked, wiping his face with his free hand. You have blood on your face, Shigaraki replied. Izuku noticed the blood on his hand. My eye was itchy that I must have wiped it with my left hand. Shigaraki approached Izuku, placing a hand on his shoulder with a grin. You did a good job. Not only did you kill the target, but you went beyond. With that, Shigaraki left the room. Toga and Izuku were left alone. Toga stared at him with concern, while Izuku offered a small smile. I did it, Toga. I did what was required. I passed the test. His voice lacked enthusiasm, but there was a hint of happiness. I'm glad you're safe, Toga said, relaxing into a smile. She was relieved he passed but worried about his mental state. How are you? I'm good, Izuku replied. I mean mentally. How are you? There was a long pause before he responded. It's there. I'm good overall. Are you sure you're okay? Having your first kill can weigh on you. Izuku smiled at her concern. I'm positive, he said, pointing at his bloody hand. I'm going to go clean up. He turned his back and walked into the hallway. Toga wanted to ask him more but decided to wait for another day. 2 days passed, and the news of the deaths spread across the internet. Everyone was shocked by the loss of a teenager, especially a middle schooler. Izuku was in the training room, punching a bag when Toga entered, dressed for a workout. You're here early, she said. Izuku punched the bag one last time and held it steady. Didn't get much sleep. Toga offered a half smile, recalling her own difficult experiences. What do you want to work on today? She asked. I don't really know. He moved back from the bag and swung powerfully at it. I didn't do any fighting when I killed Kojia. He was drunk. Easy target, Izuku said. Toga felt a knot in her stomach. She approached him slowly and placed a hand on his shoulder. He turned to her, confused. Did you have to kill Kojia's little sister? There was a long silence before Izuku simply replied, No witnesses. Toga was taken aback. She was only 11 years old. Izuku remained silent and resumed punching the bag. Toga sighed, wishing he hadn't done it, but understanding his reasoning. Suddenly, she pushed the punching bag away from him. Izuku looked surprised. Why did you d-dash? You knew she was his little sister. Izuku fell silent. I had to get the task completed and she was in the way. You said, no witnesses. You didn't mention anything about her being present when you killed him, Toga argued. Izuku stayed quiet. If you want to play the I had to get the task complete card, then Kojia should be the only one dead. Toga took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. Why did you kill his little sister? The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, Izuku replied, earning a scoff from Toga. And what does that mean? Inko and Toshinori are villains disguised as good people. I'm a villain disguised as a missing child. Connect the dots, he explained. That's so, you believe she would bully others because her brother did? Yes, Izuku said. You can't punish someone based on assumptions. It's not fair, Toga insisted. It wasn't fair for me to be treated the way I was all my life because I'm quirkless. It's not fair to lose everyone I cared about because I'm quirkless. It's not fair for me to be pushed aside because I'm quirkless. Izuku pointed at Toga, his voice rising. It wasn't fair for you to be labeled a villain because of your quirk. He gestured toward the door. It's not fair for Shigaraki to have suffered the way he did as a child because of his quirk. Izuku placed his hands on Toga's shoulders, looking deeply into her eyes. Life isn't fair. And it took me this long to accept that. Toga's gaze softened as she stared into Izuku's eyes. Izuku removed his hand from Toga's shoulder and picked up his water bottle from the floor. You can have the room. She wanted to stop him from walking away and make him look at her. It felt like a scene from a rom-com, but it was serious. She could tell he was hurt by her words and wanted to apologize. I'm sorry, she yelled. Izuku turned to her, gave a half-smile, and walked out of the room. 2 months later, Izuku had been given missions every day. Shigaraki understood that being a quirkless villain was a tough path, so he wanted Izuku to grow stronger. Izuku was assigned a target each night to boost his confidence and prepare him for difficult enemies. The other villains operated solo, never fighting together. UA had its entrance exam, and today was the first day of school. Shigaraki was excited, having planned for months to attack Class 1A. The pro-heroes were aware that a new villain group was emerging. While Shigaraki worked on his plans, he heard footsteps approaching. He didn't look up, focused on his work. When the footsteps got closer, he finally glanced over. You're up early, he remarked. I should be the one to say that, Dabi replied. A glass of whiskey, Shigaraki requested. Dabi grabbed a water bottle from the refrigerator and slid it across the countertop while pouring himself a glass of whiskey. Water, Shigaraki sighed, taking the bottle. What are you working on? Dabi asked. I'm finishing up the plans. I thought you finished yesterday, Dabi said. Change of plans. I got more intel on what's happening at UA. What kind of plans? Dabi inquired. I'll tell you when the time comes, Shigaraki replied. Dabi leaned against the counter, trying to glimpse the papers Shigaraki was writing on, but they were obscured by shadows. Are you going to tell me who's giving you this information? There's no point. They'll reveal themselves eventually, Shigaraki said. You're going to make them reveal themselves? They're a teen who wants to be a hero. They got on my bad side and have no choice but to work for us. In an environment where they'll form connections with their peers, the guilt will build inside them and eventually explode, Shigaraki explained. Do you really think Izuku can face his bullies? He killed one of his bullies. Do you think he's capable? Shigaraki asked. Something feels off about him. I can't quite put my finger on it. You're overthinking it. Just play your role in the attack. Understood? Shigaraki said. Whatever. Dabi walked out of the room. The next day, Shigaraki finished the plans for the attack on Class 1A. He was satisfied with the details he had gathered. This plan was perfect, All Might wouldn't suspect a thing. He gathered his papers and left the bar. On his way down the hallway to his room, he bumped into Kurojiri. Hello, Tomer. Why are you up this early? Don't worry about it. Tell everyone to come to the front in the next hour, Shigaraki replied. Kurogyari nodded and went on his way. Shigaraki stood in the hallway until Kurogyari was out of sight, then turned toward the wall where they entered and exited. He took the elevator down to the basement. The elevator dinged and opened to an endless darkness. Shigaraki stepped out slowly, drawn to a bright light from a computer illuminating someone's head. He approached the light. Dr. Kyudai Garaki, he said as he walked closer. Good morning, Shigaraki. What brings you here this early? The doctor asked. Are you done? Shigaraki asked, stopping next to him. Not going to answer my question? Is it done or not? Shigaraki pressed. Almost. Just needs some more touch-ups, the doctor replied. Good. Shigaraki looked over the doctor's shoulder at a light green glow emanating from the ground in a circular shape. He walked closer and examined it. Take it out. I want to see it, Shigaraki commanded. As you wish, the doctor said, clicking on the computer and tapping the last key dramatically. The green light brightened as the circular shape disconnected from the ground and rose toward the ceiling. Shigaraki watched in awe as the top became visible, followed by the body and feet. It is magnificent. He touched the glass, feeling a vibration through it. It was alive. Shigaraki moved back to the table and glanced at the papers the doctor was reviewing. What's that? He asked. The touch-up. It's the control device it will need. The Nomu will take orders from you and only you, the doctor replied. Perfect, he said, turning to the creature in the green glass with its eyes closed. You soon will be mine and defeat All Might once and for all. Toga, Dabi, Kurogyari, and Izuku were sitting in a bar waiting for Shigaraki. Moments later, he entered the room with papers in hand. What's all that? Izuku asked. The plan, Shigaraki replied. The plan? Izuku echoed. The plan for the attack on Class 1A. He laid the papers on the table and everyone gathered around. I have been working on this for months, and it's finally ready. Dabi picked up one of the papers that had a diagram of a building he didn't recognize. Where's this? Shigaraki looked at the paper. It's the USJ. Class 1A arrived at the USJ, excited to finally reach the training facility. They walked into the building and were greeted by Pro Hero 13. Uraraka was particularly thrilled to meet 13, as she was a fan. 13 introduced herself and explained the facility, detailing the different areas and their specializations. Every area in this building is the perfect place to work on fighting in different situations, she said, pointing to the right. You could work on fighting in and around water, in urban environments, she turned to her left, in a secluded hot area, or in the mountains. This is where you will get your best training. The class expressed their excitement, except for Katsuki, who remained nonchalant. Kaminari noticed and said, Come on, Bakugo. Be excited. Shut up. I don't have to be happy. Bakugo yelled. And please don't yell, 13 added. Bakugo rolled his eyes in annoyance. Katsumi chuckled at his behavior, and Izumi smiled. They turned their attention back to 13 as she continued her instructions. In the middle of her talk, Kirishima looked behind 13 in awe. Wow, I didn't know you all had a black hole. That's so cool. Izawa and 13 exchanged confused glances and looked where Kirishima was pointing. Suddenly, villains burst out of the purple void and charged toward the class. Villains! Uraraka yelled. 13, protect the class and call for backup. Izawa instructed. 13 positioned herself to face the incoming threat while Izawa headed downstairs to confront it. The purple void shifted in midair and opened in front of Izawa. A short figure jumped through and tackled him to the ground. Izawa quickly regained his footing, holding his scarf ready. The class stared at the short figure, who had short black hair, a black mask, black breathes, a green highlighted jacket, black shoes, and a black shirt. He pulled out a dagger from behind his hip and assumed a defensive stance. Izawa attacked with his scarf, but the villain dodged and charged at him. Izawa pulled back his scarf to strike from behind, but the villain anticipated the move and used his dagger to deflect it, pushing himself toward Izawa. Izawa lifted his foot to kick, but the villain aimed his dagger at Izawa's foot, attempting to stab him. Izawa redirected his kick into a jump kick, but the villain dodged again and punched Aizawa in the stomach. Aizawa stepped back and charged at the villain. The villain stood still, watching him approach. Aizawa threw a punch, but the villain moved to the left, landing a punch on Aizawa's face. Aizawa countered with a kick, but the villain grabbed his foot and pulled him down. Izuku rushed in, dagger drawn, aiming for Aizawa's leg. Boom! The villain dodged just in time as an explosion erupted nearby. He turned to see none other than Katsuki Bakugo. "All right," Katsuki exclaimed, clenching his fist and sparking an explosion. "It's time to have fun." Bakugo, don't. But Bakugo charged at the villain with a big smile, ready to attack. The villain's aura darkened, and he froze, heart racing. As Katsuki got close enough to strike, the villain sidestepped, grabbing Katsuki's arm and redirecting the explosion toward Aizawa. The class panicked at the sudden turn of events. This distraction gave the villain the upper hand, and he kneed Katsuki in the stomach twice before punching him in the face. The villain turned the dagger around and stabbed Katsuki's shoulder. Katsuki grunted in pain but retaliated with another explosion from his left hand. The villain ducked just in time, and Katsuki found himself on the ground. The villain released his grip and kicked Katsuki's leg, causing him to fall. As Katsuki tried to get up, the villain positioned his dagger at his neck. The class was shocked that Katsuki had been taken down so quickly. "Let go of my brother," Katsumi yelled, rushing toward them with some classmates. A purple void appeared in front of those running to help, and they fell in. Another void opened below half of the students at the top of the staircase, and they fell through as well. Soon, another void appeared next to the rest of the class, leaving Aizawa, Katsuki, and 13 alone to face the threat. Aizawa got up from the ground and approached the villain and Katsuki. Before he reached them, a void appeared in front of him, and he ran right through it. The void moved beneath Katsuki, and he nearly fell in. The villain grabbed him by the collar and held him up. "Have fun, Bakugo," the villain taunted before releasing Katsuki, letting him fall through the void. The class was separated, forced to fight against Dabi, Toga, or various other villains. Aizawa positioned himself in the middle, determined to prevent the villains from reaching the students. As the battle raged on, some students managed to escape their designated zones. Amid the chaos, Izuku and Shigaraki observed from a distance. "Looks like everything is going according to plan," Shigaraki mumbled. "Indeed," Kurojairi agreed. Shigaraki turned to Izuku. "What do you think?" "It's going well. I'm glad I was able to fight against Eraserhead and Katsuki Bakugo. I bet you were happy to face him, even to stab him," Shigaraki said, wrapping an arm around Izuku's shoulders. "I would be delighted if I were you. The damage you inflicted may not match his, but it's a start." Izuku remained silent, watching the unfolding events. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from the Uhi. They turned to see All Might and several pro-heroes entering. Shigaraki's smile widened with excitement. "Finally! Kurojairi, release the Nomu." Kurojairi nodded and opened a purple void for them to walk through. As they stepped through, the pro-heroes took notice. Aizawa locked eyes with Izuku and pursued him. Kurojairi created another void in front of Izuku, and a loud roar emerged from it. Aizawa stepped back, and they all watched as a massive, purple creature emerged, towering at about 10 feet tall. "Nomu, attack All Might." The Nomu roared and charged at All Might. All Might raised his hands defensively, but the Nomu seized the opportunity, delivering an uppercut that sent him soaring into the air. It leaped higher than All Might and slammed him to the ground. As the Nomu fell towards All Might with its fist raised, All Might narrowly dodged. He retaliated with a punch, but the Nomu evaded it, landing a blow to All Might's side that sent him flying. The Nomu screeched and prepared to pursue All Might, but was suddenly struck from the side by a powerful punch. While it didn't inflict significant damage, it made the Nomu aware of its attacker. Izuku turned to see who had intervened, and his expression darkened as he recognized a female student with long green and black hair, Izumi. Anger surged within him as he muttered her name, Izumi. In a flashback, Izuku recalled opening a letter. "Dear Diary, something crazy just happened. I got home early while Izuku was in his room. My parents called me into the living room and asked me to sit down. I thought I was in trouble. My father sat on my left and my mother on my right. He revealed that his job as a special agent was a lie. He was actually a pro-hero. I was shocked to learn that my mother was also a pro-hero. They told me their hero names were Telekinesis and All Might. Izumi had a hard time believing her father, who was skinny and fragile, could be All Might. But then he transformed before her eyes, leaving her nearly fainting. They had kept this secret to allow her and her brother to grow up without the burden of their legacy. She learned about her father's quirk, passed down for generations, meant to defeat All for One. He explained that his quirk had taken a toll on him after a fierce battle years ago, leaving him unable to maintain his full form for long. Her mother spoke gently, saying they were sharing this because they believed she was ready to inherit the quirk. It was an honor to be the daughter of the number one hero and to be chosen to carry on One for All. Soon after, her father gave her a piece of his hair, telling her the quirk would manifest at some point. Back in the present, Izumi stood her ground, her arm bleeding and fingers broken from the force of her punch against the Nomu. Izuku noticed her injuries but remained silent, staring at her with a mix of anger and frustration. Shigaraki sensed the dark aura radiating from Izuku and felt a sense of satisfaction. Excited, Shigaraki looked at Izuku and realized Izumi wasn't there anymore. He scanned the area and found himself standing between Izumi and the Nomu. "Get out of my way, villain!" Izumi yelled. Izuku didn't respond to her claim and stood still. He glared at the Nomu behind him. "What are you doing just standing there?" He pointed toward All Might. "Get him!" The Nomu stared at Izuku with an angry expression. "You heard him. Go," Shigaraki commanded. The Nomu obeyed and ran toward All Might. Izumi saw the Nomu running away and moved to follow it. Izuku quickly tackled her to the ground. He stood up and pulled a dagger from his hip pocket. Izumi got up, cradling her broken arm. "You want to get to him? You have to go through me," Izuku said, lifting his dagger and pointing it at her. Izumi stared at him and charged forward. Izuku remembered her quirk and knew all her weaknesses. When she threw a punch, he pushed it aside and swung at her. Izumi blocked the blow with her injured arm, groaning in pain. She reached out to touch his shoulder, but he pointed his dagger at her hand. Izumi redirected her hand for an uppercut. She landed a punch on his chin, causing him to stagger back. Seizing the opportunity, Izumi used her telekinesis to lift him into the air. Izuku noticed what she was doing and ran out of her line of sight. Izumi turned and chased after him. He zigzagged to evade her and swung at her left side. Izumi flicked her finger at him, sending a gust of air that knocked him off his feet. She smirked at her success and began to run toward All Might and the Nomu. Before she could take a step, a purple void appeared beside her. She couldn't react in time as a villain emerged from the portal and punched her in the ear, sending her to the ground. Struggling to get up, she charged at Izuku, who remained still. As she ran, her uninjured arm glowed a light yellow, crackling with energy. Izuku had never seen this before and hesitated, unsure if he should dodge. Trusting his instincts, he stood his ground. Izumi closed in on him, preparing a powerful punch. Just then he heard someone yelling. He glanced back and saw Katsuki rushing toward him, small explosions erupting in his hands. Katsuki propelled himself forward with an explosion, moving faster than before. Izuku grinned at the absurdity of the moment. Izumi was so close that she only needed one more step to make contact. He muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear, "Idiot." Izuku jumped to the right into a purple void that appeared next to him. Izumi watched as the villain jumped into the void and vanished. Realizing what was about to happen, she and Katsuki turned to the source of a massive explosion. Fear gripped them as they looked toward All Might and the Nomu. Izumi and Katsuki ran toward the explosion when another purple void appeared beside them. They didn't notice the mist nearby, but Izuku emerged from the void and knocked them to the ground. Katsuki quickly got up and reached out his arm. "Die!" he shouted, sending an explosion toward Izuku, only for it to be blocked by blue flames. They turned to see Dabi stepping out of the mist, blue flames resting in his palm. "I don't think so," Dabi said. By this time, Izumi had regained her footing, standing next to Katsuki and expressing her annoyance at the villains. "Get out of our way," she exclaimed. "I don't think so, princess," Dabi replied. Izuku adjusted his sleeve and rolled his neck. "You want to get to him? You have to go through us." Katsuki and Izumi took their fighting stances, both focused on reaching All Might and the Nomu quickly. A loud explosion shook the ground beneath them, and they turned to see gray mist filling the air. As it cleared, several pro-heroes emerged. Kurogiri leaned toward Shigaraki and whispered, "I believe it would be wise to retreat." "Why would we?" "My plan is working splendidly," Shigaraki replied. "Pro-heroes Ectoplasm, Present Mike, and 13 are here. And? My perfect creation is almost done with All Might. I won't leave until he's finished," Shigaraki insisted. Izuku glanced at Dabi, seeking guidance. Dabi noticed and nodded. He shot a blue flame toward Katsuki and Izumi. Katsuki jumped in front of Izumi, using his explosion to block the attack. The gray smoke filled the area as Izuku ran through. Katsuki aimed his hand at Izuku and launched another blast. Izuku ducked just as a blue flame surged from behind him. It once again blocked the attack, and gray smoke surrounded them. Katsuki and Izumi were covered and could not see. Izuku quickly took his chance to do some damage. Katsuki and Izumi frantically looked around for any sign of the villain. There was no way out of the gas. "Izumi, use your quirk," Katsuki ordered. Izumi reached her hand out to flick her finger but groaned in pain. Katsuki looked at her in confusion. "What's wrong now?" "My hand is broken. I don't think I—" Suddenly, there was a slash. Katsuki realized Izumi had gone quiet. "Izumi! I'm here. I was hit." She held her arm, feeling the blood. "Katsuki, you have to do something fast." "Don't tell me what to do," Katsuki muttered to himself. He reached his hand out and was struck by something hard. Retracting his hand, he felt a stinging sensation and something warm trickling down. Izumi heard footsteps approaching and swung her hand in that direction. She hit nothing but air and felt a sharp pain in her side. Grabbing at it, she felt warmth. Before she could react, she was hit again and again. Katsuki was also getting struck. Both of them were injured, their hands out of commission. Izuku used their blindness to his advantage, attacking them with his dagger. He continued to slice at them with every chance he had, knowing they were both greatly injured, but that didn't stop him from hurting them. He came in from all angles, cutting their legs, arms, and shoulders, disabling their ability to use their quirks without feeling pain. Katsuki had enough and extended his hand for an explosion. "Quit playing hide and seek." But Izuku came in quickly and stabbed Katsuki's hand. Katsuki groaned in pain, loud enough for Shigaraki, who was miles away, to hear. Katsumi, with Kirishima and Kaminari, heard the familiar yell. "Katsuki!" She rushed to the middle of the USJ before the others could stop her. Using her explosions, she reached the area and saw the gray gas. Dabi looked up and shot blue flames in her direction, but she dodged it. She let her body weight bring her down with the help of her explosions, landing in the mist. "Duck!" she yelled. Katsuki and Izumi heard her and complied. Katsumi spun around, using her quirk to clear the area. After about 20 seconds, the gas dissipated, revealing how badly injured Katsuki and Izumi were. "Are you guys Katsumi stood still, her eyes wide. Izumi and Katsuki looked down in horror to see Izuku with a dagger deep in Katsumi's back. Izuku smirked, pulling the dagger out forcefully. Katsumi fell to her knees, unable to move. Izuku stood behind her, dagger raised. Starting with Katsumi, he swung the dagger down, impaling her neck. The horror in her best friend's eyes and the defeat in her brother's were the last things she saw before everything went black. "Katsumi!" Izumi yelled, but Katsuki was silent, too stunned to speak. "Why didn't I move? How could I let this happen?" Katsuki scolded himself, unable to believe what had just occurred. Izumi's eyes filled with tears as she activated her quirk in pure rage. Izuku stepped back, sensing the shift. Suddenly, there were shots in the air, 3, to be specific. "Arg!" Izuku looked over to see Shigaraki had been shot. Retreat! Shigaraki exclaimed, and Kurogiri took him into a portal before anyone else could react. Izuku pulled the dagger out of Katsumi's neck and ran toward a portal. Izumi jumped in front of it. I'm not letting you get away. She swung her arm at Izuku with intent. Too fast, Izuku thought, raising his arms to prepare for impact but felt nothing. Lowering his arms, he looked around. You okay? Toga asked. Yeah, I'm fine, Izuku replied. He was teleported back to the base, where everyone stood. While they were at peace and Shigaraki was being treated, Class 1A and the heroes were trying to stay in one piece. Izuku felt a sense of pride.